How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Ladd Podcast. Today, our special guest is Jeff Jones, founder of the OCBC. He's involved with Oaksterdam. You've been involved with Oaksterdam since the beginning with Richard Lee. Rest in peace. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. I feel giddy about the era that we're living through. Sometimes I feel like Rumpelstiltskin when I wake up because the federal law, James, hasn't updated itself since I got sued in 1998, went through the Supreme Court in 2001, helped to stimulate other court cases out of the kind of vestiges of that to challenge where we were at. And still we have no movement.
Yeah.
And we're on the precipice, I feel, in this next
month. There's whispers of it. You know?
All of my tea leaves, James, have pushed it to a Schedule 3. Where I still may be pushing to deschedule, to put it in its rightful place right along hemp, which is the same plant, just legally different by definition. The powers that be, I think, are a little trepidatious of that still, even though Schedule 3 should have been done in the 90s.
It should have.
I had the Institute of Medicine in my office, in my dispensary in a brief time, touring it as they put out the report in 1999 in March. And they themselves said that 6-month limited time, you could give it to a cancer patient. It's not going to hurt him. That has accepted medical utility, and they just didn't want to move on it.
It's wild.
And we transitioned into kind of a stalemate system at the federal government until just recently.
Wow.
And I'm hopeful. I feel hopeful in the whole industry in that we've been laying in wait for more federal change. We haven't had a safe bank account. We haven't had a relief from the IRS rules around 280E, which has pretty much flipped our businesses upside down.
Yeah. Overtaxation's been crazy.
And the only relief we're going to get, to me, is if we move it into that full deschedule, because it's going to act like hemp. You don't have as much regulation around hemp. It's not treated like plutonium, which is what cannabis is likened to, right?
Right.
And I feel that that's the rightful place we have to land in. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic that we're going to see some industry leaders step forward after we see this next step adhered to, because how many have already stepped up to make it Schedule 3? When I was debating it in the 90s, I was shouting back then for Schedule 3, even though I really wanted deschedule. Deschedule was a non-starter.
Right.
Because Schedule 2 was all that was being talked about.
Yeah.
Move it into Schedule 2. That's a safer place. You can get it from a doctor. We don't have to worry about it. Well, now we're really talking about Schedule 3, and it's realistic. And there's folks that don't believe we'll get the 280E relief because you can't sell a Schedule 3 drug unless it's licensed by the DEA legally to get that relief.
Right. We're
state legal, James. We're not an anabolic steroid. No anabolic steroid in the 50 states is under a state legal system that is regulated and seed to sale tracked.
Right.
That is so different that I think the courts are going to interpret our relief immediately. And we're going to see a whole cascade of events and legitimacy come to our industry we haven't seen since kind of almost the era of Prop 215, when we went from criminality into quasi, you could do anything you want under the sun, including running manufacturers and things that we only hope to be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. 1996 was a good year. That was a good year. It was the year where I realized that cannabis would be legal in my lifetime.
I had a group of people sit down at the party that we did for Prop 215 passing, and I told everybody, this is the beginning of the fight. It's going to take till I'm 40 to see legal cannabis. We might have gotten medical moved into this authorization space, but it's going to be a fight. And I went to Colorado, and I just turned 40, and I went and swept my card around one of those little ID checks, and it literally came back 40, and I was having a denial that I was 40.
Yeah.
And then I noticed I'm standing in a legal dispensary buying adult use cannabis within the first week of being 40. And that was kind of my target year of like, it's going to take to 40. And this is when I was in my 20s getting sued by the government and having to deal with things that I knew were going to take, and I didn't want to admit it, but a generational shift.
Right.
And we're now almost in that second generational shift. If you look at it at the 60,000 foot view, and we see we're almost replacing alcohol. I mean, the surge of our consumption is safely being rose up, and almost most of our consumers are microdosing it. They're not choosing to do what we used to do with edibles and want to take a magic carpet ride, partly because we didn't have control of the dosages.
Right. We didn't have testing. We didn't know what a dose was. We didn't know what a milligram of THC was.
We didn't even know what it did to our internal body versus when you inhale it, the difference. And now we are in the safer zone of understanding it turns into something a lot more psychoactive when you take it in through the gut than when you breathe it in through smoke. And that is a little uncontrollable, where you can really titrate inhalation, whether it's through vaporizing or smoking.
Sure.
Eating it is...
Well, you can get so much smaller of doses, you know, and then and the shared effect, we don't have this shared effect between all of us. Like, depending on the time of day, depending on what's in your stomach, you may have a different experience. And these experiences aren't shared between everybody always. There's similarities. And so it's really hard for doctors. And I get that. I have friends that are doctors. So it's really hard for them to prescribe cannabis, even though they believe that there's benefit.
Because of its varied use, I've come up with my own theories at times, teaching and talking with thousands of folks through Oaksterdam and through the ID center that I used to run, that it might be in our own composite and what our own diet's made up of. You've heard about the entourage effect and the different terpenes, different flavonoids potentially, and we know different CBD structures have positive and negative effects, can act as an agonist, turning it down, or act as an enhancement, turning that effect or longevity of that effect up.
Right.
What if our own content had a role in it, our diets? And that one of the reasons I always felt that hippies got more high when they took a small puff than somebody that was like on a straight processed food diet is they had more flavonoids in their system. They just ate a salad that might have blueberries or strawberries in it, or ate an apple for breakfast where the other person had nothing like that. And that we don't get to rule in.
Well, there's so much stuff going on. It's like we don't even fully understand how our gut biome works, and I think the combination of the food we eat and our gut biome and all these things play huge factors into how things affect us.
Yeah, and cannabis is being shown that anybody that home cultivates it is more apt to cultivate something else, whether it's a tomato plant, a house plant. And it's partly because once they see the success of that pattern, they're engaged in the plant growing. Yeah. And it is sitting on a nest. I mean, because you don't want to leave the plant on its own. It's not as independent as we might think. It needs sustenance and support. But once you get on that trail, it's highly, as I like to say in jest, it's highly addictive gardening, because you get a positive feedback and then you get to share in the results if you're successful. And the first time that I had a medical patient that was terminal grow and cycle through in their own small area, a full garden, it was as if I gave them a treatment that was mental. It wasn't even just a physical treatment that the plant affected them when they used it. It was this mental thing. I have something to look forward to. I'm getting to that next harvest.
Yeah.
When I didn't understand the thought of when one partner dies, the other one may not have as good of life or as long of life because of that shuttered syndrome.
Right.
Yeah. And I see it when it comes to this plant because it offers you some sense of euphoria that may not be easily found in other types of substances you consume or that had been accepted. Right. Now we're starting to see a little bit more of a creeping in of other types of psychotropic substances that are plant-based.
Plant medicine is a conversation all over the place. With people like Joe Rogan, that have been advocates of plant medicine beyond cannabis and psychedelics. And I feel like psychedelics were definitely part of the hippie culture, the Bay Area culture that I grew up with, that you grew up with here. And
it was one of the first things I did when I moved to the Bay Area is I bought an ounce of mushrooms and consumed it.
Yeah.
So I understand you there. And I think there was something about both the culture around here, but also the connectiveness into that world of understanding what other people are thinking. Because I didn't look at it like I was trying to escape when I moved here. I looked at it as I was trying to tap in and catch up with where the mentality of the society's consciousness had already evolved. Because I came from South Dakota, moving here as a kid that when my dad passed away from cancer when I was 13, it shifted my whole life. And once I found some research around cannabis being helpful for cancer patients, I just checked out. Yeah. And later that year, Francis Young came down with the decision through the DEA that we shouldn't have stood in the way of it being made available to HIV and cancer patients. And I went, what? And there wasn't much available back then. There was no internet. There was no search engines. You couldn't get the information at your fingertips. The books you check out at the library were all negative. So it took till my first year of college, really, for me to get access to the internet in a way that shifted my paradigm. I dropped out of college and I moved to California. My mom, I think, felt that I joined a cult. She's like, you're not coming back, are you? And I'm like, well, not until I get done. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to say.
Yeah.
And when I told her, she's like, oh my gosh, Jeff, I don't know if that's accomplishable. She literally was just looking at the tasks that I'd set out and said, well, good luck to you. Because she was a nurse and she kind of got it, and that I was in a different struggle because of what I could see and what I didn't want to accept. And she's like, this is interesting. And then when I got sued by the government, she was in a whole different path. She's like, are you going to really in trouble? Are they going to throw you in jail? And I'm like, maybe.
Right.
But you know, my history is that I never really got to see a jail cell for the dispensing I did on Broadway, for the long activity that I did through the ID center. The only time that I was exposed to being jailed was when I went to Sacramento to take part in a jury trial of a friend that was a caregiver growing for a dispensing community up there. And I got in trouble for jury tampering. So I'm a convicted federal jury tamperer. And I pointed out every time they call me in for jury duty, but that doesn't stop them from wanting me to serve. So I find that kind of funny that I'm convicted for jury tampering and you're going to let me serve on the jury. Okay. Right. I'm fine with that. Let's see what happens. Because I'm also involved with wanting to push juries into the best course of action, because that is kind of the tenet that grounds everything. Mm-hmm. But I never thought that I would be a convicted jury tamperer. Yeah. But then again, James, looking at where we're at right now with the tolerance that we've created since the Obama era, I didn't think it would take this long to get to Schedule 3. Because I thought when Obama gave us the state tolerances, they would have had to accept our legal programs and then moved it medically. Is acceptability, and just the amount of pushback that cannabis has gotten.
It's really wild. You know, I mean, on a federal level, it's really wild because, you know, on a local and state level, people get it because look how many states are legal for recreational even, and then legal for medical. It's kind of mind blowing. It
blew me off the course when we went from medical, fighting tooth and nail to get it accepted in a couple of the southern states.
Yeah.
To having the lid blow off when adult use came past us.
Right.
And it went from 1, 2 states, 3, 4, and then it just started popping up everywhere. I didn't see that coming, nor did I see the phenomenon with hemp moving so quickly.
The Farm Bill in 2018 was a big game changer. You look at Texas and there's more dispensaries. Well, they're not dispensaries. They're shops. They're CBD shops or whatever.
You consider them dispensaries?
I consider them dispensaries, yeah. And there's more of them in Texas than we have legal dispensaries in California.
That says something for both the regulation system that we have in California and the lack of service we're doing to the community here.
Right.
Because the system here needs to be more bolstered. There's a lot more consumers in California that have accepted using it than in Texas, although I'm really liking that we're seeing it come into states that don't have legal use because any way somebody touches the plant, hemp or cannabis is a win for me. Because it's a natural path. Once they see it, it's legitimate. And we did a lot of polling once we lost Prop 19 when Richard had the cojones to push it forward so quickly in 2009 to 2010, that the best way to move somebody from being a non-acceptor of cannabis being all right in their life was having a friend or a family member that was exposed to the treatment of it or exposed to the plant in a positive way.
Right.
And we didn't know what that meant. And hemp came along and just profoundly affected legislators, representatives, people that were working in Congress. So like, I'm using hemp. And I'm like, what he said. Yeah. Because we couldn't get them to say that a decade before. It was a taboo to say marijuana or cannabis in front of them. Similar to the debate that's going around with descheduling versus the rescheduling approach. Right. I think Schedule 3 is a stepping stone to more legitimacy, but it shouldn't be an endpoint for us because it doesn't place cannabis in its unrestricted place that it should be, like tomatoes.
Yeah.
And hemp has shown that there's a path there. And how much pushback did McConnell, Trump get by putting the Farm Bill through? No, really. I mean, I asked that question to both Republicans and Democrats, and nobody's given me an answer of anything other than zero.
Right.
Because none came. And there's some groups that now are pushing back. Industry heard here or didn't understand how big it would get here.
Yeah.
But it's not what we expected, and it's not.
Well, and then you have places like Texas. I hate to keep bringing up Texas, but where they decided to pass a bill to get rid of THCA, and then the government, the governor actually overturned it.
They've recodified that same thing in special session. But one of my last conversations with Richard Lee, he moved back to Houston to take care of his family because they were older and his mom was getting into the point where she's in that age that needed a caregiver at home.
Right.
And he called me up after she had fallen and had to go to the hospital. And so he got to go out and do some stuff he hadn't done for a while. And he sounded like a little kid, James. And the conversation went along the lines of, Jeff, I went out and visited some of the shops I visited years back and they're all selling hemp now. Okay, I'm beside myself. I went and bought a half ounce for like $50. And I rolled it up and I got high. Yeah. And I'm like, well, Richard, things have changed a little bit. When was the last time you've been out, by the way? Because I knew right away he hadn't seen Texas for what you now know Texas to be.
Yeah.
And he was a little surprised. And I was like, Richard, you don't know this is happening all around? It's all over the country, not just in Texas. Texas has kind of put a moniker on it. They've done more because of the medical CBD facilities only there. They've done things with hemp that you can't do in other places.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my gosh, this is just... he was like talking to a little kid. Yeah. I was so amazed at how just that little move, because when I met Richard for the first time, it was in Denver, Colorado in the summer of 93. I went there on a boogie from South Dakota to get some marijuana with some friends, a lot of it, and then bring it back, and they were going to sell it to their friends. And I was just along for the ride because I didn't have those connections back then. I was just kind of looking over somebody's shoulder.
Right.
And we happened to get pulled in to go to the Capitol because there was a hemp rally there. And Richard was in his wheelchair passing out what he considered to be one of his publication rags of a story he was running in Texas called Legal Marijuana, the Hemp Store. And he handed out this paper that was Legal Marijuana, the Hemp Store Facts. And it was clips of the emperor and other things.
Sure.
And I didn't know who he was when I met him, but I sure grabbed the paper and took it home and went, wow, this is different than anything that I've read before. This wasn't at my library. This was nowhere.
Right.
And that was Richard all the way from the first day I met him, as acting as an educator, or kind of like, you got to get up and do something. And where I may be optimistic today, James, I'm not optimistic unless we do something, unless we keep organizing and keep innovating and keep pushing our issue forward, much like you're doing. Because that's where we're going to push through and get legitimized in a way that makes us get descheduled. It's not going to get given to us. Nothing that we've done, and you've seen a lot of this since your days, was given to us. We had to fight for it, and sometimes throwing bodies down in front of us, not fun stuff, and dealing with raids. A lot of that's kind of gone, but I feel like the trepidation of Schedule 3 is there when we should be looking at it as a bolstering of our whole debate, a legitimization of what we've been fundamentally saying for decades. Right. And it's just a stepping stone to the better space that we're going to get to. Because I wouldn't have foreseen hemp making it so quick. Yeah. I couldn't believe how quickly that educated America and took some of the Oaksterdam tenets of just put the plant out there first. But it reminded me when I had some time in city council here in Oakland, and I was educating them and trying to get them to set the highest guideline in the country at the time, James, where we set 144 plant limit and 6 pounds for every medicinal patient that had a note in their home.
Yeah.
You know that in the early days, and this was before anybody set limits, and the limits that were being set were 2 plants with those state laws that were just starting to be affected.
Right.
And we said, it's unacceptable. It just doesn't work. You can't expect a patient to be a game on day one. They don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I wanted a sky high limit. And when I brought patients into the city hall and then gave them some clones, it was as if I gave them a little kitty cat to hold on to and pet.
Right.
It was so innocent. It was so timid. It was not plutonium. And that was just a game changer for me, that nobody wanted to take their plants. Nobody thought that they were going to sell their plants and make somebody else use cannabis in front of them.
Yeah.
They were timid little creatures. And I was like, oh, we found a new weapon.
Right.
And then we would show up at things. And I literally started showing up at events with plants to give away. Because what was the worst going to happen? Somebody was going to take our plants?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little, I felt both enthusiastic, but I also thought, this is going to take some time because we're at the plant level right now.
Yeah.
Trying to educate a single plant at a time. Sometimes I felt overwhelmed. And these days I feel, just looking back at where we've gone, the dark hours of like having to fight for being listed in the paper. And now we're fighting about algorithms letting us do something that is still quasi-federally in this catch area. And that's why when I started out, I feel like Rumpelstiltskin, because I wake up some days, I pinch myself and I'm like, the law hasn't changed. The Supreme Court ruled against me and my friends are all selling cannabis today. Wow, this is a good life.
Yeah.
Even though I was told not to do it, I seemingly have gotten back in the fray, even though timing isn't necessarily the best because of, how retail is right now. It's
a struggle.
Tough.
It's a struggle. But I mean, I think we go through these waves where it goes up and down. We've seen the price surge and we've seen the price drop so many times over if you've been around for 20 years, you've seen it a bunch, and it's going to continue happening until we have a stable market, and the mindset is shifting. The consumer base is getting more educated. I see the quality going up in a lot of places.
That comes with a little bit of weirdness because the nose goes up for the consumer, and I don't want a lot of snootiness, but that is needed because with that becomes our mature, educated consumer, which we had not had in the decades past. We just had people going, I want to try this, and I don't know what it is.
Well, and a lot of times back in the day when it was $2.15, you would go to the dispensary and expect that they would have your best interests in mind, which they didn't always. But there were certain places that did. For sure. I remember going into dispensaries where it was like they had the special stuff in there. You know, they know if you want the best stuff, it's like, okay, well, here's the best stuff. And
when Harborside pushed ahead and set up its internal lab testing and tried to push out some quality controls, I thought it was a little early, but then it set up the landscape where we started to find CBD, and they started to report. It took them 500, 600, 1,000 tests, and then they would find a one-off that was completely out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have known that because, James, when I would go and hand those varieties out to my friends, nobody liked it. And we didn't know at the time why. We didn't know that when you handed somebody Harlequin or those varieties compared to their regular stuff, that it immediately agonized their high and brought it down and made them bored.
That's why those type 2s, the one-to-ones, those type 2s are so special. And I think you get a shared effect between, like, that's another one where you get the shared experience, right?
But those I would have pulled out of my garden, said they're useless, let's kill them, without a lab test. The only reason why I even knew is because we identified through lab that this was unique and had something different in it, because we would have just said, oh, that was a dud. Yeah. It just no good. Yeah. And that to me was where we were stuck like in the Stone Age for so long. And now we have such a bright future. It makes me feel that I wish I was younger. You know, I'm 51 right now. And as I teased you, I felt like it's sad that we had to go through a couple of generational shifts. Yeah. But I always felt like the advice that one of my attorneys gave me early on that was advising me when I got sued civilly in 98 was, Jeff, you're going to lose everything. I hope you don't have a life. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm single. I have no life. So yeah, I leaned into this. And he's like, good, because they would take your house, your everything, your family disrupted. And I'm like, I kind of figured that. And that's, James, why I didn't think I was ever going to get married, because I didn't think I was going to keep from being pushing this whole time. Yeah. But then I soon found other people wanted to take on the front line. Yeah. And we renegotiated what was that front line. And now the front line is so wide, there's no way they can win. Right. I look back and go, in the age of prohibition, Schedule I at the high, and everybody was running to the hills and we were growing in the sticks because you couldn't grow in front of anybody. They still couldn't stop us. Do you think they have a hope now? And the chance of Schedule III shifting is going to make it easier for them? No, and it's not boding well for people that don't want to check into legitimacy and be above ground and trying to get into the current system, because they will still be illegal. They will still be targets for the 280E rule. They won't be able to put money into their bank account legally, but the regulated businesses that have gone through the hassle of getting their licenses together, I feel like the month after the thing's signed, when it's legitimate and it's not a question, and the DOJ's inked it on the wall because Bondi's going to do that for Trump if asked. Yeah. Legal businesses are going to have 280 relief. It may not be retroactive backwards, but if we go forwards, we're going to do good things with that revenue. We're going to educate our base. We're going to hopefully pay our staff to be involved with building our businesses as they get focused on, because the relief of the overburden of regulation will shift as we have a little more money to lobby to change it. Right. And that to me makes me hopeful that why I've engaged in Oaksterdam for so long is this education of the masses, pushing out shareware to make everybody have the equal playing field. I feel like we're going to get there quicker. Yeah. And I'm hearing from everybody how sad they are about it's only Schedule III. And I'm like, yeah, you're telling me. I've been waiting for decades. And I'm so disappointed it's only Schedule III. But gosh, did it take Trump to break our morality in the country to allow it? Because we were stifled by it, that the morals in this country wouldn't allow us to be pro-drug, and that Prop 8 passed in California in 2008, and I didn't see that coming. Right. But then it turned into the court case that overturned all of the regulation in the country. And we've missed that. We've never been able to get that, because when we get into court, that moral check checks us. Right. Now, I don't know. Seems like we're in a different era.
I mean, I love progress. I love progress. It's hard to argue with progress. It takes steps. I mean, we didn't get here overnight. It's been a long struggle.
A lot of people committed to get us here. And I'm not looking at any step forward as a negative, as long as we continue to build that pressure to push us into the next level. And everybody sees that rescheduling to 3 isn't really the stopping point. It's not the best point for our businesses, for our kids, but I have 3 kids, 2 boys, one 14, one 11, and then an 8-year-old daughter. They're not growing up in the age of prohibition. And by the time it mattered to them, we might have federal prohibition nipped. Yeah. Because they can't use legally unless they're a patient till they're 21. And so, we've got a few years, James, to really work out this issue. And they already look at cannabis as like a null issue. It's kind of like scary because I'm so in it. They kind of push backwards going, oh, I don't want to be in that. It's like, that's what the parents do.
Right. Oh, totally.
And I never saw that happening to me, being the square stoner nerd.
The square stoner. Yeah. It's funny how times change. I mean, but if you look at Elvis Presley's music was, that was a bad thing to a
My
huge,
parents loved it.
To several generations, though it was the devil. It was bad. And you listen to it now and it's like, man, that was pretty wholesome music.
My parents loved it. They went to one of his live shows, even in Rapid City, South Dakota, because it was something that they saw that was happening, that they were energized by. Right. And I feel we represent that. And it was funny when I was open back in the 90s and we would put out a variety that came from a grower like you that put love into their plant and cared about it and would let us put it out on the shelf at a decent rate. Because back then it was about how I could find it to put it out that way. And I was amazed at how quickly the grapevine picked up that we stocked something new. Like there was no internet back then. It was like text messages and phone calls didn't exist outside of you calling somebody's landline.
Right.
And all of a sudden I had slews of people going, you got that? I heard you got it.
Yeah.
And so cannabis does sell itself because of its virtue. And so I've always felt we just need to let it be in its own legitimate place and we're not going to have a problem because of the powerful effect it has on people. And that's not even bringing in the home gardening aspect that I've been engaged in for decades.
Right.
Not really been a commercial gardener of recent. Since the regulations came down, I've advised on a lot of projects, pushed people out the door to get really successful. But because I had a family, I didn't get engaged directly with any one project and have been doing home gardening. And since the pandemic, I've been doing a garden club that meets on a Friday in the morning. And I talk to people all over the world, engage them to just do it right. Try to keep the pesticides down, try to keep yourself in the green without having to go to the marketplace. And it surprises me how many people are engaged in that and how wide our industries become, because you said we didn't really have extractors or manufacturers that were well off because they would all get raided and their labs would get taken down. And now I'm just amazed at how much research has come out and how we're starting to part out the different types of products. And some people push back when we brought waxes onto the scene and all these extracts and stuff and said, that's not the natural plant. And I'm like, kind of a plant in a jar. I mean, I don't know as any flowers can stick around for 5 years and you open up the jar and it smells like the day you put them in there.
Yeah.
But when you collect the right type of residues, you get that. And some of the fresh water extracts, the cold water stuff, starting to replicate that. And that to me gives us hope that there are these lines of products that we could only imagine that existed. And I've asked folks, like, what's the time that you got exposed to wax and where was it going to be in your paradigm that you saw it not going away? When I got to know like an extract, it was 1999. A group of friends gave me this little teeny flip box and said, look at this. And I looked at it and went, oh my gosh, this looks like earwax.
Right.
And they did not like the term earwax. And I'm like, look, you touch it, it turns white. It looks like earwax.
Yeah.
So we took ear off it and just left it at wax. And it was that residue that you would get from running butane or a hydrocarbon through it. And I went back a couple of years in the past and asked how this group came across hydrocarbon as the extracting. Like, we tested a bunch of stuff and it was the cleanest. And so it was really that extract found us to keep out that chlorophyll. Yeah. And that changed the ballgame for a bunch of folks.
I believe Kay, Trichome Technologies, he wrote the original paper for cannabis in 1998. And it's evolved since then. I saw bubble hash before. He
didn't give it to me. It was another group of people that were in the Bay Area at the time that gave it to me because of a huge stash of outdoor grow. Yeah. Kay was involved intimately with making things move and shake around that industry because he always saw that there was a way that we were going to pivot into this, if allowable, that we couldn't necessarily see because we just weren't allowed to at the time. Right. And it was pivotal that we had those folks early on starting to pivot into this because they started to train some of the regulators on how to deal with it.
We didn't even know how to smoke it back in the day. We used to use coal and put it, did the torch with the coal, get that hot.
It was a hot knife and on a flame, and that was even worse. And it was just like,
we used to use the hot knives for the hash. Yeah. But when we tried to hot knife any sort of, butane extraction, any of these products, you couldn't do it because it'd be too hot. We never figured out how to do it with the hot knives. But
it worked. It just didn't work the same way. And you had to you use these little collector tubes over the top of it. Oh, wow. And so I've seen it done. And that was where, because I was running a head shop at the time, James, I saw a lot of different glassware run through my era. Yeah. And it evolved. where you stop seeing a lot of those certain types of devices, and it evolved into different things. And when we came out with those extract pens, gosh, 06, 07, started seeing them pop around. It shifted the paradigm.
Well, we all had atom smashers too. The one with the hot rod where you'd heat the rod up and it had the bowl that had 3 holes around the side, but no hole in the bottom. And then you heat it up and you smash it in there. And, that was an interesting way. And then, I think, pens started coming out. We had the early days of the rigs. That was pretty wild. The early rigs that were massive.
Well, and then there's the debate that you go down of whether or not you water filter it or not. And then it's like, I get it when you're combusting.
Yeah.
But I'm not so clear on it when we're using these dabbing nails, because if we're trying to get in the same material that you're putting into the dabbing piece, you're going to filter it out with cold water in between it. There's no way to, even when you're just using a cold glass piece, you collect out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's the idea? Are you trying to stop it from getting into or not? And then what are you filtering? Because if it's not clean stuff that you're dabbing.
Well, and I get it if you're trying to cool it down because it's hot. That
could be the only case. And that would be you're just cutting a little off the top.
I'm not a huge fan with these devices, these e-rigs, like the Puffco, the Focus V. They've got several, DabX, and all these different ones.
I've used the Puffco dry.
I do. I use my Puffco dry. And with the review show, we've been reviewing all these different devices. I love the review show because I get to try all these things out, really think about it pragmatically and also do some A/B testing with all these things. And so we're looking at it and it's like, does water help? I don't think so. Unless you're trying to cool it down because you're using a really hot setting, you can just turn down the setting, in my opinion, if you want the terps.
No, I completely agree.
I love terps, and I feel like terps help enhance the effect too. And especially some of these things, whitethorn rose, the dabs with whitethorn rose they're pretty magical. They taste amazing and they give you a great effect. And I feel like I want all of that. I don't want to filter it out with the water. And
when you're trying to explain it to somebody that's smoking a joint only, it's different. Right. Because you do want to filter potentially some of the particulate matter out. There is a reason that you would engage in filtering that if you're using a water pipe.
Well, even filters, I just want it to hold the plant material so it doesn't go in my mouth, right?
Well, that's the goal most of the time with joints is you don't want to breathe in a particulate matter and you're trying to keep that last little soot, if you're burning it all the way down, from getting to you because it will hurt you.
Right.
But speaking of water for a moment.
Sure.
With my garden club, I came across something that I try to talk to all growers about when I come in contact with them. And this may be the time to push it out on your podcast because I haven't really talked about it a lot publicly, but in my garden club and privately amongst folks and in the industry, I have came across a method that has triggered a lot of feedback and some interest because it involves water.
Mm-hmm.
And that harvesting ag products, we don't always see what we're going to do with the end product until we get there with the industry evolving.
Right.
Like with apples. You don't just pick it off the branch and put it on the shelf and sell it. There's a lot of in-between steps. Even if you're doing it organically, sometimes there's coatings that can be put on it.
Oh, yeah.
With all inorganic apples, there's a lot of the unorganic coatings, but even organic apples can have a specialized pectin coating that's safe to be consumed.
Absolutely.
And it protects it from spoilage for purposes. I've come across in harvesting flowers that one of the hardships was always cleaning your scissors, cleaning yourself, working with pliable gloves that aren't sticky. So I'd been using vinyl gloves actually, because they're actually non-polar and they don't stick even to resin. So if you're playing with residues and ice water stuff, you can just smooth it right off your hands.
Right.
Well, I started trimming and I was following up on some outdoor growers that were pitching me to wash my plants. And so I got into bud washing. Even though I was growing inside in just an LED 4x4 tray with hydro, very clean, no pests really, hardly any pesticide residue. And if I did use anything, it was biological.
Sure.
And so it wasn't really I was cleaning them. It was much as I was just doing the process.
Right.
And because I was inside, they didn't get a chance to dry before I wet trim. Because I'm indoor, I don't do the dry, let it sit, and then dry trim it all after that kind of sits for a while to cure. I wet trim it down to allow kind of a haircut approach to it where the leaves shrink into the bud.
Sure.
Because when you wet trim, the leaves are going to curl a little bit inside.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I did it wet. And what I got at the end of the hour of my session was I thought that I had a loss of moment because I set my scissors down and there was no goo on them. I looked at my hands and there was no goo on them. I'm like, what did I do? Did I use my other scissors? And I usually have 2 sets of scissors because even in an hour you can get really gooey and I don't have time to clean them while I'm sitting on a Zoom.
Yeah.
So I went, no, that was the one pair of scissors. And what I came across, I had to replicate the next session. I did another trimming session.
Yeah.
Is that when you're trimming the wet leaf with wet hands and wet scissors, none sticks to the scissors. And then I went and did a bucket wash dump and dumped that bucket wash in through a bubble bag to see, well, did I shake off a bunch of trichromes and that's why it's not sticking? Like, what did I do here? And I was using cold water, but not like ice water or anything.
Sure.
There wasn't anything in the residue. It was just a little teeny bit, less than you would see on one scissor hasp pash. And then I replicated it. And what I found was it seems to act as if when the plant's wet and you have it wet, you're getting less residue pass. And then I went and talked to some mechanical people. I went and talked to one of the guys that does the demos at Twister and the Greenbro company. And they went, well, that's kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, I know Colin. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because we went the opposite direction. We're all doing dry now. And I'm like, what? And he's like, well, yeah, everybody's kind of went in the other direction because they cure it and then we dry trim it and you have to catch it.
They're so worried about contamination, right? I think that's the biggest part with moisture. You want to get rid of the moisture as quickly as possible, typically.
And that goes to the old grower mentality where once the grower gets it right, they don't want to change it and they get stuck in that lane of never wanting to get outside of the safe lane.
Nobody wants to. Once you're comfortable with something, people do not like getting out of their comfort zones.
But like walking through your systems, air controlled, humidity controlled, you can set it and forget it kind of setting and you get to see it on your phone. The only hardship in this treatment is the first day, maybe 2 days, you get a little extra humidity in the room and you're just dealing with it differently. And then it's into the zone. And what I've found, because I've become a huge fan of disinfecting waters, less with bleach, but more with hypochlorous acid, unless you don't have that, maybe H2O2 or hydrogen peroxides. Because of the pythium, the fusariums that we can get directly in our water table as we start to get again into a drought session.
Right.
I found it in the Bay Area is pervasive. And the more I've talked with folks, even through hearing some from medicinal genomics folks, that we're finding even the hop latent viroids in at the root level and then goes up into the plant. So what we do at the media level is important, and that they're finding fusarium or pythium in cocoa that's being grown. It's not in the plant, it's in the cocoa, and the plant gets it from the cocoa. That when I used hyperchlorous water in this mix, it did affect what was going on within the system, and it seemed to not take away the smells in my curing room, but it disinfected it from any potential quick molds or pathogens that might be in if it didn't have control of the humidity in the curing room.
Right.
And so what I found is it's a little more supplely caught in the curing room. It's not such a flash dry because you are a little wetter.
Yeah.
But when talking with some commercial growers that have tried it, they're like, wow, it's night and day. I don't have to clean myself.
Yeah.
At the end. And I'm like starting to wonder, in the commercial scene, did we miss it by wanting them to get it completely dry and going dry trim instead of going completely on the wet side like they kind of do with apples when they're cleaning and polishing and pushing them over to get it into the storage?
Right.
Just because we didn't have the paradigm, because all growers were phobic of touching water.
Yeah.
Because what I found is there may be something there that could help our industry, both on the disinfecting side of just using natural stuff that you see whenever you go to the supermarket and you get that little and in your produce section, it starts to fan the water down.
Yep.
You go look at where that water is being fed by, and almost always you'll see a little jug, and in the jug it's hyperchlorous acid.
Wow.
And that's to disinfect the water systems as they're spritzing it out, and also to make sure that they're not growing any bacteria on the produce as the water sits there for a moment.
Nice.
And it's fairly safe stuff.
Yeah.
And what I'm looking at is, as we get more professional in our growing and controlling it, the things that we can do to kneecap the stickum spots.
Yeah.
Because people that grow at home, they hate harvesting. And it's like, it's trim jail, right?
Trim jail. We used to call it trim jail. You know, it's funny, but we used to wet trim and then we went away from it. And that would be funny if we went back to it. But I feel like these are the kind of things that happen.
It's not just wet trim. Yeah. I had to relabel it because when I said wet, they thought I was just talking about green leafy trim, which is a natural indoors. And it's not just that, because if you do it green and wet, it's not going to do what I'm talking about.
You have to actually get it wet.
I then labeled it wet trimming, and that got lost in what do you mean? So I call it the water trim method, where you're literally like getting a spray bottle if you don't dunk it to wash it, and you're spraying it down with water so that it's dripping, and then you're setting it in your little stack plate. And it keeps it turgid longer. Like you can sit there with a tray, instead of it going down in 45 minutes to an hour, if it's low humidity room, it'll sit there the whole time.
Yeah.
And
you
then
just better not have any botrytis, powdery mildew, fungal pathogens on your plants because it'll accelerate the growth of those things.
Completely agree.
But as long as you don't have those.
That's why I started with the process of the dunk wash. So I'm taking a 3-gallon bucket with a little bit of hypochlorous acid in it, pH down, dunk washing it, drip drying it a little bit, and then trimming it. And I got very little problems in the cure side.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. And that's where, when I went and talked to even the commercial people, the trimming company, their biggest fear was, well, we've had some issues and nobody wanted to go down that path because it's troubling.
Right.
And I'm like, they probably didn't understand what we understand about how those controls need to be set up so that they're kept specific.
Sure.
And it's not one that I would want on anybody without some research and understanding, but I feel that there's something there. I wouldn't have mentioned it.
Yeah.
Because what I found was this profound effect, even with home gardeners, just trimming a few plants, they won't go back.
Mm-hmm.
Now that they're trimming with water, they want to do it with water because it's clean on their hands. It's clean on their scissors. It's not affecting the plant in a negative way when they get it out.
Well, and the beauty of wet trimming for you guys at home is that you can basically have your flower and you can also have the trim. You can freeze it. You can make amazing raws and bubble hash, whatever you're going for. And you don't have to use your buds, right? Because it's a byproduct. I that's why we used to do it, because we used to make bubble hash, right? And so we wanted to trim wet. I held on to that for a long time in the early 2000s because we liked bubble hash, but I also liked bud, right? And so it's a great way where you can have both. You know, a lot of guys, they grow just to extract the flower, and that's okay too, you know, but I think there's something for everybody. And if you want to have both good hash and good flower, it's a great way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting how we've definitely segmented the industry where we went and visited gardens that you'll never find it in a flower form.
No,
because it's all going to an extractor or a manufacturer of some
that
form.
Never happened before. This is all very relatively new, where they're basically the whole. I mean, except for places like Morocco, you know, and other places around the world where it was exclusive to hash. But we have indoor farms that it all goes directly to extraction.
Do you think that that's a pattern that we're going to see move into the future, or that's going to get crunkled just because where the marketplace is?
It's going to grow. It's going to grow because people want convenience. People want, you look at the tobacco industry,
not the extract
right?
section, but the indoor growing going to like fresh frozen or going to extract versus say an outdoor or greenhouse, just because of the huge amount of volumes that we're seeing coming online.
Well, I think a lot of it's done outdoors now. And I think there is some indoor, but it's hard to compete price-wise. And it's hard to tell the difference quality-wise, right? So like the amount of money you pay per square foot on an indoor cultivation to create an extract product versus outdoor, it's significantly cheaper outdoor. I mean, it's not even, now is it a better product?
Yeah, because it's not contaminated. Almost all outdoor has contaminates.
Right.
Because
now they're also washing this stuff. They go through dunks and they're washing.
No, but I'm talking internal contaminants because we're a bioaccumulator. I've read a story in one of the large farms that just opened up by a guy that ran Leaf Brands.
Right.
He opened up his Southern California farm.
Yeah.
$15 million project. And he bought a farm that completely was free of hazards. Organic hay production, cattle, no farming practices and no neighbor farms that would have crossover sprays. So it's to that level for outdoor farming that you have to protect what you're going to be doing. Because what he ran into when I read the story was all the products he's been trying to buy from outdoor to indoor to certain folks, all contaminated and won't pass his COA to begin the process of getting into his system. So he couldn't find safe product because they were running afoul of all these new tests that are teching things down to the billionth level that we can't pass because it's almost a pharmaceutical level.
Sure.
And I have to say, I'm concerned, not in flower form for like Eagle 20, but in extract form because it's concentrated. It gets concentrated.
It concentrates everything.
And so I'm with us having lab tests on extracts. I'm with us really teching that out to the point where we get safe stuff because I don't want to see one of us having problems because of contaminants when we're emerging in a new field. Yeah. And I feel like if we do this correctly, James, we're going to have a very long-lasting industry because our stuff's very safe. Right. One of the reasons why I dedicated my life to the cannabis plant as an early kid and jumped off the cliff, so to say, when people were saying, you don't put your name on the business card because you don't get to pull it back and you're going to be tainted for life, Jeff. You're never getting out from under this rock. And I'm like, I like this rock. I don't want to stop.
Sure.
And they didn't get what I saw. I felt like I was a visionary at a time, kind of like a Steve Jobs. Right. Where I had folks around me like Ed Rosenthal, the advocates that I grew up with Dennis Perrone, and they were pushing me into making this something that we didn't understand where it was going to go. and we likely weren't going to be happy with its outcome, but it wasn't going to be where we were. And that to me was the biggest thing that I kept driving ahead, is that we don't get to stay static here. We have to keep moving. And that's where I keep my enthusiasm where we're going, is that we're not there yet. And everybody kind of knows it. Everybody knows this is such an evolving industry, and that even extracts is getting bigger and is placed. I never saw what was going to happen with over-the-counter liquids.
Yeah.
The fact that we have now gotten on cases on the shelf in supermarkets and in places in convenience stores that, with the regulations that we're dealing with, would have taken decades.
Yeah.
But we're there today.
Mm-hmm.
And people are exposed to it, and they're going, this is what they're afraid of? And that to me was what always needed to happen, is that more people needed to try it, needed to find out that it wasn't what they said it was.
Yeah.
And then it slips away from the controls that we've had in place, where we're going through this law enforcement order right now.
Right.
I don't know as I'm completely opposed to it, because we've had some trouble even in our areas, in the Bay Area, where there's crime and problems. Am I really afraid of things? No, but things could be better. But it's kind of interesting being like, I'm sure glad they're not coming after us.
Yeah.
Because that is the only hope that I've had, in some sense, is that they're not talking about us. They're not trying to come after us. And they're still calling us illegal. They're still not treating us with I think, the legitimacy and the dignity, the dignity that we deserve for doing things in states during the pandemic that was frontline service.
Yeah.
I remember when the pandemic was declared, I sat down with Ed Rosenthal outdoors in his garden, and we were having this epiphany that everybody had to be separated. And we were from this old era where during those times you go and congregate because you're worried about what the government's doing.
Ed.
So I had the conversation with him, and I said, don't you feel weird though? Because right now we're being told we flipped the script.
Yeah.
Me and you were charged like running drug nuisance houses and having no licensing and just being treated like criminals.
Right.
And now, and I had to joke with him, now all the folks in the industry just got a badge of honor. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, they're all essential workers, Ed. They're being told they can't get shut down.
Right.
Do you get the irony there? And he went, and we were puffing on joints, and all of a sudden we started to giggle like kids, going, there is a little bit of irony there, that we went from being shut downable, like they wanted to raid us. That was our fear tactic, being woken up at 6 a.m. and drug out of bed, to now, go ahead and try it. Our state said we have to stay open.
Right.
I mean, it was almost as if it was a mandate that we didn't want to do, because everybody, for some sense, was scared of running a business and being out there.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, now when we look back, it was one of the best things that happened to us.
This industry had a really good COVID, unlike other industries, that like the restaurant industry,
it
they
opened up
completely
delivery.
were destroyed, right? And restaurant industry was destroyed, but that opened up to food delivery, right? And so now people are used to getting food delivered. It's way bigger.
But that opened
than
up delivery for us too, because when
sure.
I used to talk to folks about home delivery of cannabis, they'd wig out. I don't want to bring a dealer to my house. I don't want Pineapple Express here.
Sure.
And now they're like, oh, I had
convenience.
this 80-year-old grandmother across the street from me. She's like, gets home delivery all the time, doesn't even think a moment about it. I'm like, how times have changed so quickly with that little pandemic shift there. And so bad things happen. I mean, I lost my business building, but I was always in business in downtown, James, with the ID Center, with a fatalistic plan. I wanted to put myself out of business, because my business model was, when I'm not needed, I'm going to close down and do something else, because I can pivot.
Yeah.
Because I went and did something that nobody else said was possible. I stood my ground in a time and an era where they didn't say this was a good thing to do. And I'm not untarnished from it, but I'm educated. I'm experienced. I have something to share, because the fear that the government gave me, I quickly lost when I was a teenager after my dad passed away, and I was looking at the odds of where things were going to go. And when I got into this path, I was like, now I know what to do with this fearlessness, this cliff jumping ability where I know I can jump off a cliff and not die. And it intrigued everybody else behind me. And that's where I didn't underestimate new blood, new frontline people, and that I didn't have to do this forever to make this struggle work. I just had to do it enough to find somebody else behind me that wanted to do it. And so I just kept looking back going, who's next? And when I saw those next characters, and some that were even from my first part of my life, when I moved here, I got picked up at the bus stop from Etienne Fontaine, one of the founders in Berkeley Patients Group. And when I got shut down, they quickly picked up and started doing things. And that was where it got interesting, where it was almost a baton to pass off. And that I was less worried about being stopped, because we came out of such a dark era that our dilemma now is learning how to deal with real business models, the mergers and acquisition problems that are ahead, the trying to get out from under the heavy regulation that was unduly placed on us because of the burden of us being treated like plutonium.
Right.
And I feel that we're almost there. And that the Schedule 3 stepping, they don't see it on the upper side. And I remember when Sam posted something about, this rescheduling going nowhere under Biden. And I'm like, when you lose this, it's going to be the biggest thing's ever happened to you.
Yeah.
And he texted me back right before he blocked me saying, I'm doing better than ever. I'm getting more fundraising goals met. I'm having more stuff happen. And I'm like, that's only because you can't see what's happening around you, which is you're losing this war.
Right.
You're completely losing this. And I don't mind Sam being around for the rest of the time because they're going to turn into MAD.
Yeah.
Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which we need some counterbalance to us being enthusiastic about bringing a psychotropic substance into our mainframe.
Right.
Because they need to have that control weight. But am I worried about us being a bunch of drug drivers? Am I worried about us not creating people that are going to repopulate the earth? Because I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, so all their fears, they don't compare to what we've had to deal with our lives being turned upside down, the families disrupted over something that was just a plant. Yeah. And so I am just so optimistic about things. And it's partly why I'm always wanting to teach and engage in things. And, me and the wife are going out to Virginia to take part in an old group of folks that have been running the POT conference, the Patients Out of Time conference, that was one of the early things that would organize medical clinicians around the medicinal cannabis approach when there was nothing. And I'm going to teach people about home gardening and garden setups because I feel like just making people engage at the home gardening level is going to further change this. And in some states, you think it's illegal to grow, but you can still grow hemp because even experimentally, you don't have to have a license to grow it and you're not commercially doing it. If they come to take it from you, it's legal.
Yeah.
And that's something that is so different profoundly in my head that you can go buy a seed now at a corner store that's legal.
Right.
Because seeds are legal everywhere.
Or technically a clone.
And clones are now becoming quasi-legal in a way that they never would have been. And that to me is such a hopeful state of affairs that soon you'll be able to ship clones over the state line. Because
we do.
But it won't be a concern because there's just no concern of it.
Yeah, we go direct to consumer from our website to your doorstep.
Yeah.
In 47 states, I believe. All right. So there's a couple states that don't allow clones. And so we try to abide by the rules. We're getting credit card processing. So it's
you have to do things where you can. And, and again, I did credit card processing for dispensary sales in 97. Will I tell you how I did it?
You guys were cowboys.
No. Because it didn't make sense what I was doing. And when I told the people what I was doing, they wouldn't have allowed it. So I had to tell them certain things that I wasn't doing.
Right.
And that was just the way it was. Mm-hmm. But did I think I was ever going to get charged for running a money laundering business to Kentucky and back? Maybe, but I thought that would be a very interesting court case.
Yeah. And
it just never happened because they didn't care about it. They cared more about what I was physically doing than the other money laundering things underneath of it that were also occurring.
Yeah.
And
it's wild.
It is wild looking back at where we've come and some of the close run-ins that we had. Because, I never would look back on it and think that I shouldn't have been shot once. Because like Dennis, we all had close run-ins. And I had a run-in in my office when the DEA came in to stop me. I was holding a press conference that day at noon, and they came in early to engage the press a little bit. And they came in as press agents to try to get in and see that I was opening. Wow. And then violate my injunction. Well, we caught one of the guys. Like we knew it was him in my lobby and we didn't let him into the dispensary room. My staff made him sit down on the couch. And James, I remember I had no fear. I walked right up to him and said, you need to come with me. And he's like, well, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Jeff Jones. You came to see me, right? This is my press conference. He's like, oh. And he stood up and he was wearing a Dennis Perrone shirt. And he had like long hair, like fully tanned. I mean, it was total informant-like approach where you couldn't have told he was not one of us. And I'm like, this can't be, but I'm going to go with my gut here because that's what my staff said is this guy. Yeah. And so I literally stood him up, moved him over, didn't touch him at this point and said, we're going to go over here. And he's like, where are we going? And I'm like, we're going to go into this room and you're going to tell the people why you're here to stop me. Yeah. And as I said that, he noticed what was in the room was a bank of cameras that we had lined up to sit down in front of Nate Miley, who was my city council member that was the keynote at my presser that day. And he tried to barrel roll around me. So I grabbed him, James, and pushed him as hard as I could, tried to get him into that room. Yeah. And my staff literally thought I was in a physical altercation and were trying to pull me away from him because they thought, and so I could have been shot because anytime you touch an officer in those instances. But then he rolled away from me, got into the elevator. We were up on the 3rd floor and Bill Panzer was with me, one of the defense attorneys of the era.
Oh, yeah.
And so I ran over to the elevator and I'm sitting there with my hand on the button, screaming at the guy as I'm telling Dale Garinger, who was also there, to go down the hallway and bring all the press cameras into the elevator right now. I'm not going to let this guy go. And so he goes and gets the press cameras. They come in and shuttle and stuff into the elevator. Kind of, this dude's got his hands over his face. And at the time we didn't know it, his friend had snuck into the elevator with him and was sitting right next to him, trying to like get out of the space. Both of them were flipping out. You could tell from their look.
Wow.
And Bill looks at me. I'm screaming. I'm like spitting. I'm so pissed off. And Dale, like, he couldn't believe that I was so out of character. I'm like literally yelling cuss words at them. I mean, I'm just livid. And Bill grabs my hand and rips it off the elevator and says, "You can't do this, Jeff. You could get shot right now. You could get in prison. You need to let these people go right now. I'll walk them out to their car and this is over." And I'm like, okay. I knew at that point, I was like, you're right. I'm out of control. Yeah. And so I let him go. And boy, that was the biggest shakeup day, because what happened right after that, James, we held a little press conference, but it didn't work out well. Let me just say that, because it inevitably landed me in that scenario where I had to explain to my local police liaison in Oakland that I had a meeting with that day in a working group, how I just stopped his friends. Yeah. And he was like, "What?" And at the time, I always knew, James, that this guy wasn't just OPD. He was DEA. He was one of those duly sworn guys, because I was given him as a contact as soon as I set up my program. And when I got sued, he got really happy to know me. And I'm like, this doesn't seem good. Right. And so when I sat down next to him at this meeting, I'm like, "Yeah, I just stopped some of your friends." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, those DEA agents that you knew were coming in today to stop me at my press conference. So I stopped him at the door, and it's all over the news. So you should go check it out." Yeah. And he literally got white-faced. And I knew at that moment, I was completely right. He was a Fed. And he wasn't just sitting there as an OPD agent at my meeting. He was really watching me from above. Wow. And it didn't scare me, James, because the way he interacted with me, he'd checked me out. He'd followed me home. He'd tailed me. He pinned my numbers. Sure. But I made myself so vanilla, because I knew that they wanted to do that, because my heritage, I wanted to be conservative enough that when they took me in, when they tried to prove I was somebody crazy, that they're really going to have a hard time doing it, because I was like a Christian right-wing crusader, more like, because I came from the Midwest. Even though I was doing things that were seemingly outside of the bounds, I wanted him to feel like I was a hero. Right. And he literally leaned in at the next meeting and said, "Wow, I didn't know you had that in you. Good job." And it was one of those things where he saw in me, I wasn't trying to do it for the wrong reasons. I wasn't selling out the back door at the time to just use this as a foil to make this happen for a big business kind of scene. That the people I was helping were really sick, and that they were not fun to be around. A lot of them had mood disorders. You didn't even want to deal with them most of the day, because they were not well. But then I started getting calls from people that were referred by police. Wow. To my agency, because they'd find them in the field. Yeah. They'd see something was going on that didn't fit the picture of a criminal, and they'd go, "You should just go talk to Jeff and he'll work it out for you." Wow. And so that's when I knew that I had broken down some doors. And it came from an era, James, where before that, I was dealing with the narcotics department, and they were taking cards from my clients, taking plants, and they had no sensitivity. Yeah. And that me and my attorney, Rob H., we went to the city and the working group, and we said, we need to fix this. And so this gentleman, whose name is Rick Hart, being designated to me, I got to teach at the police academy, James. I mean, I look at some of my varied history, and I don't even know how I did it. I feel like Forrest Gump at times, because I walked into the police station down at 7th Street with a tub full of marijuana plants. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking. I walk in, big old Rubbermaid, one of the big totes, and it's got 2 or 3 plants in it, a couple that are non-flowering, and one big bushy one that was small bonsai that was flowering. And I was bringing it in to show the cadets that it weren't yet police, to let them see what they were going to come across, to let them understand these were legitimate now because of Prop 215, and that they had to remain in place so they could lead to lawsuits. Yeah. And me and Rob got up and did our spiel, and we were very happy and giddy, because it was like, God damn, we're training into the police academy. We felt like we were
pretty amazing. Yeah.
And then the narcotics agent that we didn't know got up and said, "Don't listen to any of these guys. We're one court case away from all this getting rolled back, and this is just a bunch of nonsense. They're selling snake oil, and we don't know what the hell is going to happen here. Right. But maybe we should understand this a little bit." And he gave a little pause, because he's like, "Because we do have some legal liability if we do things incorrectly." And so we stuck with that. We just kept honing in on the liability of making it a low priority, of just giving them less to do because they don't need to deal with it, making them have to call a command officer to the scene to make it a hardship for them to just take the plants before anybody knew what was going on. Because you know how it was, smash and grab. If they took it, you weren't going to grow it after you got it back. It was dead.
Happened a lot.
Yeah. And so it was kind of like we just kept pushing and pulling back and forth and rocking the boat enough for them to say, God, this is so hard. And then there was this year when Richard was around and we had Oaksterdam set up and he had a whole different set of liaisons because he passed Measure Z, which was the ongoing oversight committee with the city of Oakland, where they had to then give him reports about their arrests and do all this stuff we could never pull out of them with FOIAs.
Right.
And we get this feedback from one of the documentary crews that was interviewing Richard.
Yeah.
They were also doing cop shows, literally the cop show that you see on TV.
Sure.
And they wanted to come to Oakland to do DEA Oakland. And the DEA said, don't come here. It's
bad idea.
Well, not only do we have some limits about what we can do, we have a moratorium when it comes to cannabis. We can't really violate the moratorium. And they literally told this producer friend that was inferring with Richard that you guys pulled one off. You have a moratorium for raids. And he's like, really? He's like, how do you know that? And he's like, talking to the cops, the DEA guys, all the liaisons in Oakland. They're like, it's just the official order of the city. Even if the DEA wants to come in, they got to do it alone. And he's like, yeah. And it just gave him a whole, I remember talking to him after that. He's like, I got told something. I don't know if I should tell you. And I'm like, you're going to tell me. And he's like, yeah, you're right. And when he told me, he was like, I don't know how we did this. And I'm like, a lot of effort, Richard. It was decades.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're right. Okay, I understand it now. Because this was so long after we kind of forgot our early history of how we got to this place. And it's because we gave them history to lean on to. We gave them safety and we gave them a sense of order. That they saw us doing something that wasn't going to be a free-for-all, and they were really trying to just throw a big party to make all these kids get high and maybe crash their cars.
Yeah.
And that to me was what we needed at the time, is some leadership. Now, we've kind of gotten out from under that veil a little bit and things got a little sideways here and there, but cannabis is such a safe substance. Right. I've always felt that we're bigger than any one incident. We're bigger than any one person that does something that's negative. Just like alcohol that has a lot of problems and associated deaths with its use.
Right. And this plant makes the world a better place. It's hard to argue that, on so many levels. And even if you don't believe in smoking pot to get high, you look at Sanjay Gupta and what he did with 60 Minutes and how it was such a game changer for people like my parents, where it's like you have these kids with seizures. How can you argue that seizures, it shouldn't be the parents' option to give their kids plant medicine to make their lives better?
Well, after the Raich case came down and they banned the ability for you to choose your own medicine and grow it yourself, I definitely was trepidatious about what the government would give us the right to do. And when I saw Sanjay Gupta stand up and write some of the tenets against the ballot argument that I was proposing with Richard Prop 19, and he condemned us legalizing adult use, I wanted to punch him. I literally thought that he's the worst shill that I've ever met for the medical community. And I was just really ticked off because of the heritage I had with knowing Dr. Todd and a lot of other colleagues that I've met with because of the ID center I ran. I talked to doctors all over the state, if not the country, about this issue. And I turned a lot of them away from being completely shaded on this to going, okay, if some people want to use it, I'm all right with it. I'll monitor what they're doing. I'm not going to recommend everybody do it, but some people find a benefit from it. Even though I can't send them to a safe source. I can send them sources that are safer than the street. Okay. Because that's where we were at the time. And things have just shifted so much. And I kind of forgot the thread that I was on there. We were...
Sanjay Gupta.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about
when he came out with the weed segments on CNN and went 1, 2, 3, when he put out the first one, I cried. I said, this is the only time a man has had the balls to come out and say he was sorry on this issue. To say I fucked up. I believed what they told me. I put out what they told me and I didn't go and validate that science. And when I went back and looked at it, I was mortified that I believed it and told everybody that this was bad.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I had a hand in that. I forced him to go take that leap. I forced him to put it out there to begin with, to take that bad step because we forced his hand. Prop 19 is about forcing the issue. Right. It was about putting it out there early and making people have to adapt to it because we weren't going to go away and we were not shy about it. Yeah. That's the thing I learned. You can't be shy because nobody's going to go do something for you.
Right.
And when we got Sanjay to step backwards, and then when I saw what he put out, that first segment, I don't think anybody's ever done a better job of being the poster kid for this plant than what he did in that first segment. And it wasn't even Charlotte. It was him.
Yeah.
It was him standing up and going and touring Asoli's farm, which I knew
it was the trust.
I knew
it was
Muhammad
the trust
Asoli.
that he built with everybody before that. Yeah.
But seeing that first tour of his farm when there was nothing really grown there, it was barren. There's a couple of plots of cannabis and it was big for him. He was like, look at all this. And Sanjay's going, this isn't really anything. I've walked around some illegal fields that are bigger than this because he went and visited the Stanley brothers and they were just booming. And he's like, you don't control this anymore. And that just got Asoli's goat, I think. Because when you saw the second or third segment, when he went back, he was booming. He was like, look at how big I got. Everybody's calling me up, asking for samples and doing stuff. And it's because we pushed the issue so far that the only safe source was now being popularized with phone calls because he controlled where everybody was getting their research grade material from. And I think Sanjay shined a light on that. And now it's not so anymore. And that to me was worth him putting so much condemnation on Prop 19. It was partly why we didn't pass the Holder press conference with Baca in Los Angeles, where we had a corrupt sheriff who went in with felony charges into prison after that. Stand up and say he was going to come after all my friends. Anybody in the medical marijuana community that helped to pass this and thought this was a good idea, I'm going to raid you if this passes. It was a threat down. It was the worst thing that could have happened because at the point before that, we were pulling ahead. Literally, we were showing all the polls. We were just a slight 51, 52, 53. And then that one took us down into the 40s, which we never really pulled up from. Because who can talk down the federal government and the local sheriff, who was really the rank and file cops? And he had a whole bunch of brass behind him and Dianne Feinstein. I even think the governor might have been there at the time, or the lieutenant governor, which was Gavin Newsom. And you remember, I mean, our ballot argument for Prop 19 was wrote by who? You remember? I do. I mean, it's like fingers on the chalkboard right now. Kamala Harris. Like none of the Dems were our friends back then. They wonder why they're going to lose so bad on this and Trump's just going to steal another victory from them. And remember, I grew up in South Dakota, so I became a Democrat by moving to California and surrounding myself with a bunch of lefties that were all in the cannabis movement and understanding that maybe it's better to be compassionate than it is to be business only and transactional. But maybe it's going to take somebody that's transactional to move us because everybody else, and this is part of the problem I've had with the Dems being sued by Bill Clinton and having our school raided by Obama, is afraid of what we do to them and how they look. And the
problem is they're so worried about how they look. Right?
The Republicans can care less and they just do things. And even Bill Maher, who I've befriended over the years and push him to talk about cannabis as much as possible, has said that the Dems need somebody that is willing to lose everything. And I posted back to him, you're right, but you're wrong. We need somebody that has something and is willing to lose it all. Because that's what they got with Trump, is somebody that had some things and has shown America, I could do this and I could go do what I'm doing and not even worry about this, but I'm worried about other things. So I'm going to do this, but it's going to cost me. And that's what we don't have. It seems we have a bunch of sticky politicians that don't feel that they want to risk what they're doing. And they get more rich by being in seats than not. And that's where.
Well, that slowly but surely has to go away. Right. I mean, that has to go away for us to be successful as a country. Right.
Agreed.
I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to look at. And, as a country, as people, as individuals of this country, we need to look at that. There needs to be more scrutiny there.
Well, and it was hard for me because, again, I always thought the Dems were going to help us out of this paradigm. But I was an equal opportunity discusser. I would talk to anybody about this issue, James. I didn't care who you were looking at, what religion you were part of. I felt like if you're going to get sick from cancer, you got a chance to be talked to. So there was always opportunity there. And it was tougher to talk to Republicans because they always looked at this as a lefty issue. But things changed. They started looking at this as a lefty issue and more as a less government issue and more that fit their paradigm of what they wanted, which was pro-business, pro-American. And I have to say we are that. I mean, we're American grown, American made, and we're, for lack of a better way of reinforcing it, we're agricultural based. I mean, we're sitting in front of a bunch of cannabis and hemp seeds. For Pete's sake, this screams agriculture. It screams American made.
20 years ago, I could have been arrested for these seeds.
It is
literally
that's the travesty.
They could have thrown me in prison for the seeds that we're looking at right here.
That's the travesty of where we come from. Is the fact that just the educational tool of the seed or the nutritional value of the seed was persecuted. And then we had some slow wins with some hemp food stuff, and that you could trade non-viable seeds.
Yeah.
And then we started to just see it roll into this big mountain of change that brought the Farm Bill. And I didn't think the Farm Bill was really possible when it came to, and when things were working out. And I thought that we would get something that just didn't work. But then I had this epiphany right about the time things were starting to break loose and all the farmers were starting to engage. And I said, this isn't going to turn out the way they thought it was. This isn't about renewable hemp. No. This is going to be about the flower tops.
It was about something so much bigger, and we didn't know it at the time when it passed. It's pretty mind-blowing.
And I keep reminding hemp advocates, don't think that we're not seeing a lot of movement. And they're like, well, hemp's not being used enough, and it's all the fibers are just being
the seeds dropped out, the price of the seeds is falling out, all these things. That's okay, but we are still getting movement.
And we're building back something that we've lost for over 50 years, was an industry that you have to tool back up. And it, just like with chips, just like with other manufacturing, these plants don't get built overnight that are going to process the fibers or that are going to handle the biomass. And we've seen with the emergence of the labs, I never thought that we would see the amount of labs that we got developed just in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Let alone some that popped up in areas where production was really heavy. Like Leaf Brands was founded up north.
Yeah.
And then they had trouble because all the northern farms had contaminants. So they were really not so viable for extraction. They might be viable for flower cuts, because when you go to test the stuff, it's not really a violation when it's in the flower form and it's very low residue. But when you concentrate it down in the extracts, it's all popping negatives on the tests and you can't do it.
Right.
Or they would say more politely positives. It has it in it.
Sure. So I want to take a step back and discuss Oaksterdam, because now I'm working with you guys. I'm teaching some classes. We have some stuff going on. We're doing a breeding certificate course coming up. And I really want to talk about the origins of Oaksterdam with you, because you've done so many things, but how did that all evolve?
Well, I really look at Oaksterdam as coming out of Richard Lee's mindset. When I was sitting and chatting with him in the early days, we would sit across the table and much like this, trimming at his little teeny shop in East Oakland that I helped to move him into when he first moved into town. And he always foresaw a need to get himself out of trimming jail. It was really the monotonous work that really got him, I think, dullent, that he had to do a lot of work that if you brought somebody in, they expected to take half your grow, trimming it. Yeah. And so he wanted to create trimming crews that were line workers that just worked like any other industry, that expected to get paid a certain amount, had to come in and work a certain hour shift. And that took some training. That took some understanding, because the industry before that was so much based on hazard pay. And he saw the vision of where we're at now, that we would have an industry that needed certain facets filled with trained staff. And I didn't see it coming. I have to say, I thought about it and I was like, this seems hokey. I mean, you're not going to get any school to talk about it. And he's like, you're right. So we're going to have to do our own. And he had the idea to market around it. Since the day I met him, he was a marketer. Remember, he handed me a paper that said legal marijuana, the hemp store. And he was marketing his own store in Denver, Colorado, while he was in Houston, just to get people to talk about hemp and the emperor wears no clothes. And so he used that opportunity, I think, to also market his storefronts, what he was doing at the time, selling clones. And I remember running into another friend of mine, Steve D'Angelo, who ran Harborside. And it was in the 08, 07, or 09 era. And Steve was hard up for getting press hits. He was trying to get his name out there, build his brand, hired a PR person, and wasn't getting return phone calls. I could just see it. And I could understand why. Richard was sucking the air out of the room. Every time he was talking about this upcoming proposition, the media would just sparkle at it. And, Steve wanted to raise his hands with testing results and they didn't even want to show up. Because it was just a different era. And so he was trying to figure out how to get engaged in that. And I think it's partly why he got so anti-Prop 19 at the very beginning, is it's like he was trying to play the foil to get some attention, because he also saw the crosswinds ahead. The origins of Oaksterdam were really that I saw Richard see a need and he just threw it out and filled it. Part of what he did was put together a press advertisement that got people to call a phone voicemail. And when he got hundreds of calls back, he decided he needed to fulfill the request. He didn't know he was even going to have a school until he put out that marketing pitch and people said, you need to build a school.
When Oaksterdam was what people called Oakland back in the day, the medical day, we all called it Oaksterdam, and there was, what was it? Bluebird Cafe,
Yeah.
And there was some really cool spots that we used to go where you could get clones, you could get flour, third floor.
The element of Oaksterdam was small shops hidden away, and they could do small businesses. So we had the Lemon Drop, we had the Bulldog, we had Blue Sky, which was initially called SR-71. But when he got a cease and desist notice from the Lockheed Martin folks that handled that spy plane, he decided to just change the name to Blue Skies because his idea was trying to be like that, a stealth in the midst of everything else. Right. And so Oaksterdam was a way to poke through that and end the stealthiness and become very focused and have a kind of a centerpiece.
Right.
And when he founded it in 2007, I didn't see it at the time, James, but it quickly rolled him into being so political that he couldn't have not done Prop 19.
Yeah.
That everybody around him was like, what's your next step? And I didn't see it at the time because I had to look back at what took him into that spot. When he would get up in front of the class, they were all looking at him. What's the next step, Richard? Wow. What are you going to do? And so it was just like he was almost giddy with the chance,
Well, before Oaksterdam, there was no in-person classes that I'd ever heard of. There wasn't like
the closest you would get was the Cannabis College in Holland, which was partly what he was trying to replicate. Absolutely. But it was a very loose knit group of advocates that met at a little hostel that shared books and secrets and kind of did what we were trying to do, but less formalized.
Yeah. And it's evolved into so many different things.
Well, there's lots of schools. There's lots of universities now. I think Oakland is now the cornerstone of pushing that change. We had 2 Supreme Court cases. We founded the first cannabis university school that is now being replicated. And that's part of what Richard always instilled with me. He's like, don't monopolize it. Make something that's going to work for everybody because we need it to be everywhere. And unless you're going to go everywhere, don't do it.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's courses at Cornell. There's courses, at big universities.
But it's taken a lot of time and they still aren't plant touching. Yeah. But the Schedule 3 change helps with that because one of the neat facts about the Schedule 3 change that Oaksterdam's, I think, going to help publicize is that immediately as soon as we see a Schedule 3 change, if it comes in an executive order, say, for instance, he signs an order, demands Bondi do something, Bondi acts on it within the 30-day window, it becomes legal in 30 days under Schedule 3. Yeah. It changes the way every state deals with it. Did you know that every state, except for just one, has a mirroring citation in their code that says, if the federal law changes, so does their code? Guess what state won't be legal after that 30 days? There's only one state that won't be medically legal for cannabis within 30 days of that change.
California?
No. California's a mirroring statute, plus we're already almost unscheduled here.
What state?
Kansas.
Well, that's okay.
Kansas will be the only
smaller state.
But Idaho, Nebraska, all Schedule 3. Yeah. So we moved, even Utah, Schedule 3. All these states.
Everybody but Kansas is good to go.
Yeah. It'll be medicinally legal. You'll be looked at as less of a problem than you were before, even though the federal law hasn't made it completely legal. Sure. And so that to me is such a breath of fresh air. And it's why I'm still talking farther. I wish we could see descheduling, and I would twist anybody's hand I could or arm to try to do that, including Trump's. And I would say that I didn't think that I would ever want to shake his hand.
Yeah.
But I had trouble when I got sued by Bill Clinton trying to think about voting for Hillary Clinton because her kid on that campaign tour said that cannabis killed. I mean, I saw the clip. You can't take it back. She said, well, I was misquoted. And I'm like, well, you said it. You might not understand what you said, but you said it.
Sure.
It's just like a different era. I mean, would I shake Bill Clinton's hand right now? Yeah, maybe. Thanking him for suing me to get me ready for George Bush's term, because I probably would have went to prison under his term if I wouldn't have been lawyered up and dealt with things correctly, because I was pretty crazy. But I just expected better out of some presidents. And with Trump, he made hemp completely descheduled. It's the biggest thing that's happened to this plant in history. And if he moves cannabis, its sister plant, so to say, into Schedule 3, again, one of the biggest things that happened in our industry.
In our lifetime.
And I would have to go shake his hand and say, thank you. I don't know that anybody prior to you would ever have done this, because they didn't. Biden had both houses.
They had the opportunities too.
And
that's the biggest thing.
He didn't even move Schedule 2.
So many people have had the opportunity to make a difference that looked past it.
Yeah. I mean, I expected maybe a little bit more breathing room from Obama.
You would have thought Obama would have made leaps and bounds, because he's also somebody who smoked cannabis.
Yeah, but then I understood what happened to him. He was the wild kid that got grounded by his wife. And when he met his wife, they partnershiped, and she controlled that outcome. And she controlled some of that discussion. Because when his kid got in trouble and she had to wear that shirt that says "Smoking Kills" scratched on the front of her with a Sharpie, a white shirt, that was the mom. Even though Obama was out there at that next tour that she wanted to go to publicly, the mom made her wear that shirt. So I think the mom pressuring him not to go farther on cannabis really kerfuffled us in a way that led to more problems and divisions in our whole industry and in society. Because look at how many more people got caught with charges since Obama's era.
Jail time.
That just wouldn't happen if he would have put out a little bit farther pressure. Because at the time, when he did do what he did under Holder, first under Ogden, with the Ogden Cole memos that came out, that was the biggest thing that ever happened. I stopped an Oaksterdam class and we watched it live on a screen as it was being pressed that day, because it was the biggest thing that I'd ever seen. And, you know, when I went back and looked at the Ogden memo, that was the first one that came out and Holder had to acknowledge was really from the DOJ. It was the first time they ever wanted to downshift from it. Yeah. Ogden was familiar to me. I went, I know that name. And you know why I know that name? He was the lead civil defense attorney on my case, James. Wow. So when I went back and pulled out my drawer of case files, I flipped through them and his name was on all of them, on the front of it as the DOJ lawyer in DC, not the guy that always handled my paper. That was a different underling. Sure. But the main guy in the civil division. Yeah. And so we affected him, James. A decade before, we let him know patients weren't going to go away, that these people were suffering. And we just kept at it with these patient stories. Yeah. And so he had to read it all to get the case under him. And so that burned in his head over a decade. And he was the one that came out and said, we need to just back out of this. If it's legal in the state, we don't have a right to really want to go in over the top of the state law. Yeah. And then he went back to private practice within a month. That's why we know that memo as the Cole memo, because as soon as he quit, Cole had to come out and revise it and put it back out there, or it would have been gone to history. And so the stepping is every person you talk to in the system, don't underestimate what they might be doing down the road. Sure. And I never wanted to pick a fight with even my Department of Justice lawyers. Yeah. I wanted to try to raise their awareness, much like I was doing my local liaison cop, my local law enforcement handlers, whether they were federal or not, to make them see that we have a different path. What you think is going to happen isn't necessarily what I'm going to do. And when I don't do it, you're going to look at me differently. Right. With Oaksterdam, you guys got raided. Yeah. And that was a big deal. Yeah, it was disappointment because it came under Holder and Obama. And it was really, I think, a payback for us pushing forward Prop 19. It happened in April of 2012. And it was the precursor to what was going to happen in Colorado and Washington. I feel they were trying to scare us, much like they did in the October surprise press conference with Holder and Baca down in LA, trying to offer the vote and downplug it. The idea of raiding the school, was to slow down political change. They saw that we had really lit up a debate. We had set up a structure, the unions, all sorts of law enforcement that were former, and that model worked. And when they took it to Colorado, it gelled. Yeah. And that they knew the polling was showing the constitutional amendment was going to pass. We kind of questioned what was going to happen in Washington state because it was a little more conservative. Right. But when they came back and reviewed it, they could have voted for the same initiative in Washington state and still got the same percentage. To date, we still don't have home grow in Washington state. I know, it's really not right. And it's because they chose to kind of bolster it backwards. They thought we were going to lose Colorado because it was put together by advocates and it was a little. They got rid of their medical program too in Washington state, unfortunately. Yeah, it's because they wanted to roll it all up and be nice and neat. Part of what happened in Washington state was a good change, though. They changed the Liquor Control Board to the Liquor Cannabis Control Board. They changed state ownership of liquor businesses, alcohol businesses, to now being privately owned as they brought us into the fold. Because did we want to be state owned? Right. No. And because we wrote our law, it couldn't be state owned. Right. So we changed the alcohol environment also into private. So there was doors that we opened up that we're never going to get paid back for, but we caused more change. Well, Washington is such an interesting market. I work up in Washington. I've worked there in the past, especially over the past 8 years. Yeah. The quality up there is substantially better, I would say, than California. And I can, on average. It's because they survived through that pushback. They went from like the 30s a gram down to where it's normal, and then got into that and they have brand trust, where people trust the brands. And so they'll go, they know what to expect from their brands. And we're starting to see that in California more and more. It's just part of the educated market. Once your consumer base gets educated, they can make better decisions. It is amazing that we're looking at an educated market before it's federally legal. Yeah. You know, and that's partly why I feel like Rumpelstiltskin at times is that we're talking about maturing a market base that is still buying a federal illicit substance. And we know it. And it's like we're surviving around it. We're doing business in a hardship way. And imagine when that knee gets off our neck. Right. that's why I feel so giddy about what's going to be coming ahead. And I feel like we're going to be holding on for dear life in the coming months and years as the amount of changes that are happening and potential infusion of extra opportunity that we haven't seen because we haven't been able to be on Wall Street, for Pete's sake.
Totally. So for those of you guys at home that don't know a lot about Oaksterdam University, it started out as an in-person class environment where you guys taught weekend classes, long format classes, everything in between. It was the who's who of the cannabis industry at the time. Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, and we still have a varied amount of instructors across the country. And that's partly when we went online, we were able to do more contact because we had to bring people to Oakland. It became a hardship.
Well, literally, your people from all over the world can now experience Oaksterdam University without having to come to Oakland, which I think is such an amazing thing where you can share education with people all over the world.
And at the time that we were in the brick and mortar store from 2007 to 2020, it was an era where not as many people got to touch the plant.
Right.
And our city gave us an opportunity that we could not accept.
Yeah.
They said, you can go and teach these people. They have to be above 18.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, what else? And it was like, that was it. They didn't make us have credentialing, checking medical papers, none of that. They were just like, as long as they want to get into what we're doing and they understand that you're trying to do it the right way, we're good with that.
Yep.
And the city just let us go to town. Now, could you imagine that? We're still dealing with a federal illicit substance and we're letting people touch the plant, clone the plant, harvest the plant.
Yeah.
Like we literally had an on-site lab where we tried to grow that full profile so they got intersected within each area that we now see as a segment. You know, whether you're cloning, cutting flowers, even dealing with some of the post-processing and how you would manage curing it. And I think Oaksterdam is still pivoting into, gosh, we trained a lot of government agency people in the early days. We trained the tax people.
Yeah.
We trained some of the regulators before. We even trained out-of-state people.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we're engaging with workforce development and all sorts of things across the country with governments that are now starting to bite off what was part of our early mission, which we thought we would have to do. The government would never do it with us.
Right.
And I feel it's that pressure campaign. And Oaksterdam has been there along the way trying to pressure both agencies, independent groups, and forcing even some universities that would have thought this would be, as I've said before, a snake oil show, into dealing with us and legitimizing our curriculum within their structure. Not all of them you can touch the plant with yet. Some of them are focusing on hemp, but just the aspect that we're getting into those curriculum-based structures, I feel is part of the legacy of Oaksterdam pushing ahead so quickly.
Yeah.
I never could have imagined it would have been this successful, James. I always thought we were going to be the redheaded stepchild in the back room, not accepted, not brought out, not really given a chance to be on Main Street, shunned into those sectors of the city that were not to be gone to.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case. I mean, we have flipped the script, not only being essential workers within the pandemic era, but just regular types of establishments. And now we're showing up at regular types of fundraisers. When I went to my first fundraiser politically, my check got returned.
Wow.
Literally, because the dude was afraid of me. And I can understand why. I'd just gotten sued and he was a little touchy about, but I was like, it's just money. And now you get it, because you've seen the past. But it's not the case today. We're very popular amongst politicians. And I feel there's a reason for that. But there's also a legacy of us forcing them to do more. Is that if they're coming at us to ask us questions and to try to get our funds, they should be listening and acting accordingly to what our needs are. And that's why I've always liked an elected representative kind of system, is that we get a chance to talk to them when they're listening to us. And that's normally pre-election. Once they get into office, that's where I feel we've been stuck in quagmires and decades of quagmires.
Especially the second term for these guys. There are 2 terms. But it's really interesting because Oaksterdam, one of the things and the reasons I think Oaksterdam is so special is because Oaksterdam was founded in culture. It was before the commercialization of cannabis, right? And so there's something extremely special about being in that world, right? Because nowadays with all this stuff, it's very commercialized and it wasn't about plant medicine, or it was about plant medicine before. Now it's about the commercialization and profit and all these other things.
In some ways, it depends on where we're at. And I have to agree with you, in areas where we've been here a while, it is completely commercialized. But in the new emerging markets in the South, they're hosting events for vets. They're doing medical cannabis focused things. They're doing what we used to do in the Prop 215 era, more legitimized, because that's all they've got to be in that lane with. And that to me is it's making up for lost years of Florida not being online when we were moving in the 90s.
Totally.
They're now catching up to us.
No, Florida's an amazing place. And, if you look at the conversations I'm having with people in the classes that I'm teaching with Oaksterdam, I'm still talking about effect, right? I'm pushing that narrative about long flowering varieties and effect. That's my new, foot in the sand. This is where I draw the line. And
the long flowering varieties are like the lost era because the commercialization, as you mentioned, that we are going through that era, especially in places that have been mainlined and legitimized for a while and have had some legitimacy with legal regulation. I feel the growing phase is how do we get those long flowering formulas back into the rung? Part of them is that they are an energy suck. So they may be more in the world of those canopies that are partly greenhoused.
And it's not for everybody, right? But it is
once
it
they
is
get exposed to them,
yeah.
I feel that they will take it in as much as the short ones because it's only a little bit of extra time. And what you get out of that time is sometimes more interesting than you get in those 8 to 9 week flowering sets.
And all I can do is have the conversation on my show with people like yourself where we can continue this narrative, right? And I feel like this narrative is so important that they shouldn't be forgotten. And they're not for everybody, and that's okay. Nothing's for everybody, and that's the beauty of the world we live in.
But once you smell
right?
some of the hazes,
you
can't go back. You can't go back.
Well, you can to certain people because they're not for everybody. But I agree, and I feel like some of these things, and they're not all the same. So if you think of haze, or you think of some of these long flowering or equatorial varieties as heart palpitations or stuff that gives you anxiety, they're not all like that, right?
But I'm even speaking just towards the smells, not even the effect of using the plant completely. Because when I smell a haze in a room, it makes me it's just
so complex.
It's just so different than everything else that you smell. And I still feel that we have some innovation with our plant development. And partly why I like Oaksterdam is I get to see peripherally what other companies are doing as they petition us and bring in
you have your hand on the pulse
and bring in new innovative things that are coming across our desk. And I've been pushing both seed companies and other companies to develop different offshoots, like seed breeders. They've been stuck in production of making big flowers and making plants grow for production.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of catering into the home grow market a little bit. And partly what I think would be bigger than even the home grow market is like the fragrance market, where instead of growing the plant just for production of flowers, we're growing it to represent a replacement for free breeze in our home. So we get the focus plant. We get one that gets energy into the plant, and you're running quick runs, likely auto flowers. So there's no muss, no fuss. You put them in the
There's even
windowsill.
companies that are doing it right now to terp. They sell the terp bags. I can't think of the name. We'll show it on the screen. But these guys are, they're in Livermore. They're doing steam distillation, and they're creating packets of terpenes, right? That you can add back to your. But I think this is just the start of something that's so much bigger. And I love this conversation too, because it's like now you can take these terpenes, you can infuse them into fragrances, colognes, perfume, all these.
I'm just thinking
soaps.
Botanicals. As we walked into one of your rooms and you had the tray of roses for other reasons, that's what I think of now. Partly our market when it comes to home gardening. Instead of thinking of it cut flowers, think of it as an ornamental flower. The person's growing only for look, only for smells. Yeah. And we've gotten rid of the criminality of it, the worry that when you open the door, the smell of cannabis in your home is a problem. And now we're using it as an uplift. Right. Because when I smell hazes, that's what I really like is the smell of it. And I remember before I got into coffee as an older adult, when I had kids and I needed the extra boost of energy, I would walk into coffee houses and I would just love the smell. Didn't want to drink the coffee, didn't like coffee, didn't need it. I was already too lit with my own internal push. Yeah. But boy, did I like the smell. And so that's what I feel like we're missing because of legality, because of the tarnishment of growing cannabis in your home. The soccer mom that would never use cannabis, would never think about consuming it, would quickly grow a flower just for the smell. And if they get engaged with that smell, might grow it forever, might grow another one and another one. And instead of buying a few seeds, they're going to buy a big pack and they're going to continue to grow them. Sure. And we haven't even gotten to ornamental lawns yet. I'm just talking about a potted plant in your home, let alone to the point where we start to see the innocuousness of cannabis hemp in your garden that's not getting jumped over the fence to get clipped because people don't care anymore. It's not valued the same way. So part of that is the market bottoming out, the hazard pay kind of going away, which we're getting close to. Sure. The liberalization of it cross-bordering, so we're not worrying about where it goes, so that the government's not in our face. And then I really feel like there's this whole market where even cut flowers being sent to people. When I got married to Dale, we had a ceremony that was a fundraiser for Prop 19 in the Rotunda building just across from my office where City Hall was. And we petitioned the government through the police to let us smoke outside in the foyer. Completely didn't care. And we brought in live cut flowers as our bouquets. So we were wearing them, and we wanted to treat it like it was a cut flower. And I feel like there's a whole industry that's potentially coming online. It could be hemp, that's less restrictive, that we're growing cut flowers to ship bouquets around. And that we will be the bouquet that people order instead of just roses, because we come with terps.
Oh, yeah.
And that to me is because people like roses because they have that smell that allures them in. It's not just the look. And we've missed that because of legality. And I can't wait until we see that come back around. Is it going to take another 10 to 20 years of social changing? I don't know.
There's so many different aromas, right? You can go, the sky is the limit with cannabis, right? Like literally within the plant, there's so many, and depending on when you harvest it and all these other things, you have these different aroma profiles that are just outstanding. And some of them are sweet. They're not all skunky and funky. They're sweet.
That's what I'm saying. Candy. I feel there's going to be a smell for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, there is. There's something. It's the beauty of it is like there's literally something for everybody. And then even in combinations, it's like
I can't even think about combinations because I'm still stuck on a one-off plant in somebody's home that didn't know that they liked the smell of cannabis. But when they smell it, because I used to get off on the fact, James, when you go around to people, they knew what burning cannabis was, but they didn't necessarily know what smelling green cannabis was.
Sure.
So you could play with that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Now the smelling of green cannabis is much more common. You can I used to hate when I would walk into neighborhoods and I knew somebody was growing because I felt like, okay, I'm going to expose somebody accidentally here by talking about them. Yeah. Because you could smell somebody growing in the neighborhood when I would walk in the Oakland Hills, for instance.
Sure.
And nowadays it's so common that you don't know who's not growing.
Right.
Right. It's just like,
especially in the Oakland Hills.
Like at this time of year, you're starting to smell it a lot.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
And that to me, I'm still kind of casual, and I grow inside mostly because I live in Oakland and I feel home invasion is still a big risk. Yeah. But when we get to that point where it's not, that to me is where another interesting appeal for seed production and for clone production comes in, because people might want ornamental flowers. They're not even thinking about growing them for production or use outside of just their smells. Right. And then they put them in the compost pit. Yep. And that to me is a different place than where we've been, because we've been stuck in, we are only agricultural farmers for a product that's going to give somebody a feeling or an effect. Yeah. But does a smell not do that? Because remember, the whole aromatherapy industry kind of got the same snake oil shake early on. Right. And then it got proven scientifically that when you breathe in lavender terpenes, they will calm you down. Right. And there's this reason that lavender is a calming effect. It's not just some kind of psychic mojo.
Yeah, it's not bro science. It's actual science, right? And there's a lot of this stuff that we're discovering for sure.
And that to me is what has made me so intrigued about cannabis and has spread out to other things in my life that has made me more of a botanist. Yeah. You know, I grow cactuses that are ethnogenic before it was popular. Mm-hmm. I've grown some plants in my yard that my kids don't even know are psychoactive, that they're like, why are you nerding out on that plant? And I'm like, I can't really explain it to you. Yeah. Because you might kill it accidentally and I don't even want you to focus on it.
Right. Yeah. So with Oaksterdam, we got this breeding class coming up. We should talk about that for a little bit. You've read the book.
What's the most intriguing part of what you might be presenting in the breeding class, do you think?
I think structure and understanding good information, because there's so much information out there, right? We're basically condensing all the information out there, and we're giving you solid science, and we're giving you a pathway to go from either not knowing a lot about breeding, even if you know a moderate amount about breeding, to a solid game plan for how I can be successful at breeding. And you're going to get it in a short amount of time, right? So in 6 courses, you're basically, I think it's 6 1.5-hour courses. You're going to pick up a lot of information. Each course is specialized. We basically took the book, and I didn't want to, I work with Angela. Angela is a gem. She's amazing. She was one of the most important people in my life, actually. She helped me do the book. She helped me get organized. She's done so much, but she's helped organize the book in a way to where it's not the book. We're taking it to a whole nother level. And I think,
you've come a long way since you've even framed the book. Because the book is dated now compared to today.
It is. And it took me 5 years to write the book. And we have this facility. And so being able to share information on how to breed and how to do it correctly. And then also, I think a lot of people think breeding is making seeds, and that's just one tiny aspect of it.
That's the end result. That's the end result, but it's not necessarily, I feel like, the focus,
how do you do selections, right? And how do you do selections? Giving people a little bit about history about breeding and genetics and the plant.
With seeds being so variable, because when I teach classes, it's very much on a peripheral level. I'm not teaching breeding. I'm teaching when you make seeds, you're not going to get what you think you're going to get. Yeah. how do you handle that outcome when you're picking the two varietals that you want to cross? When you're creating those crosses, how do you handle that differential that you know you're going to create something that's so variable?
Well, I think for the most part, what people need to do is collect a whole bunch of data points so that they can reflect on what quality is, right? So the first most important thing that I stress with everybody is collect data points. And you collect data points by growing, you collect data points by smoking, comparing and contrasting. I feel like understanding the structure, those things are super important, but really consuming so you understand the effect and what you like and what you don't like about the plant. And I feel like there's so many paths you can go down with breeding too. It's not just a one size fits all solution. This equals this. There's so many different combinations of things you can do. We can go start breeding for drug discovery, right? Are we going for rare cannabinoids and rare cannabinoid combinations, chemovars, right? Are we going to go breed for chemovars? Or are we breeding for commercial stuff that's going to be another lemon cherry gelato, right? And so there's these directions that you can go. Do you want to just fit in and breed like a lot of these other guys where they're just breeding for the latest and greatest and it's part of this? Well, the plant is so diverse. We can go here, and there's so many different directions we can go. We can start incorporating landrace or varieties that are found in different regions that have acclimated to these regions. And we could even breed for specific regions by incorporating diversity, and I think diversity is so important with cannabis. I wouldn't say that diversity is lost because we keep having these conversations and it's still available. But if we don't keep on having conversations about diversity, it will get lost. You look at bananas and you look at other fruits where, like, even tomatoes in the store, it's very rare that you see more than a handful of types of tomatoes, right? With cannabis, it's the most diverse plant on the planet. We do have a ton of diversity, but as it gets commoditized and it goes into grocery stores, it's going to look at tobacco. How many varieties of tobacco do people know
Will it turn out more like the apple? Because I liken when I teach people out gardening and seed development that we're much more like an apple. Yeah. That when you grow an apple from the seed, you're never going to get your Red Delicious. I don't care if you grow it 1,000,000 times. That Red Delicious is grafted 100 years ago and it's been moved forward. So it's kind of that cloning scenario that we talk about. And do you see us going the way of the apple? Where at the grocery store, you're going to only get the Red Delicious. You're only going to get the Granny Smith that's known by everybody. It's brand aware.
Well, I hope not, but I see that the grocery stores are going to only have a select amount of space, right? And so we'll see, but I think there's also the internet, which you can being able to get sales over the internet.
The fact you talked about farm direct already, I feel that is the play that we need to make our politicians more aware of. We had almost that right away in California, and Gavin vetoed it because he felt it was going to end around the regulations.
Sure.
Instead of understanding that you capture more of the marketplace when you let the cultivator not have to do another thing with it or turn it into nothing because he can't make enough to make it go through the process.
Yeah.
And so I'm really an advocate for allowing farm direct.
Yeah.
Because that will let the apple never take its course with us. Because farm direct means that you're going to get the spice of that farmer at your counter versus what is limited at the grocery store's counter.
Right. And why genetics and breeding is so important moving forward, especially if you're a small facility or you're a farmer that has a small a grow that wants to stand out, is you want to be able to provide something that's different, that's your own expression that you're providing to the world. And I feel like that's so important to be able to give something unique that's your own unique version. And you can do with terroir. You could have sour diesel grown in 10 different places. It's going to express differently. But why not take it a step further and have your own version of sour diesel that's a cross of sour diesel or whatever that cultivar is that you like, that you fell in love with as a kid or you have access to. And why not make your own version of that, do some selection, do some breeding, do some selection, and take it to that next level where you can make your company stand out on a whole different level. And that's what I love about the book. That's what I love about teaching the class. I feel like it's great for the home grower or somebody who wants to come into the industry and maybe breeding is the path they want to take. But if you're a company, you can take the book, you can take the class, and I feel like you can develop that into a game plan to where, what am I going to be doing in the next 5 years to make my company different than other companies?
I think that hits the nail on the head. The business plan model is catered around the brand that you're going to develop that's different. Because if you're a cultivator, you're just going to be punching out pounds unless you create something that is different than what everybody else has. And as we talked about with apples, they're one-offs. And so you really could create something that is your own that nobody else has.
Well,
and so do you think the dynamics of breeding have changed a little bit? And as a breeder,
for sure.
what pulls you the most? Is it the weight production that people are trying to get to, or now is it wash availability? Because I hear that mentioned a lot.
Well, I think washing is important now, but I think the term commercial viability is important, right? So it has to be commercially viable, and typically what that means is it needs to finish in 56 to 63 days. It has to yield X amount, which is typically, like, if we're looking at per 4x4 or 5x5 per 4x4, you're looking at 3+ pounds, right, of quality flower. It has to test above 25% THC. Mm-hmm. Color it's not a deal breaker anymore, but it was for the last 5 years. And now we're slowly going away from it having to have color. But I think what separates you from everybody else, like, the thing is you're not going to, as a small time cultivator or a small business, if you want to be a small farm, small business licensed in the United States, you're not going to beat the big guys on price because they can scale so much faster and bigger and do it cheaper, right?
Well, glass house is $91 to $105 a pound. Yeah. So you can't beat that.
You're not going to beat that, right? So you have to beat them on quality. You have to beat them on something unique that's unique to yourself. And the best way to do that is with breeding. Like, hands down, is providing genetics. And the thing is if it's proprietary, that means that none of your competitors will typically have it. And they might have something similar.
In the end, that gives you the marketplace where somebody is going to have to buy out your micro brand. Yeah. And that, to me, is what I don't think a lot of cultivators get, is that what's going to make them viable to be bought in is having something that's unique that has market share.
Right.
And if you don't own that proprietary variety and if you're growing somebody else's named variety, you're not building your own brand awareness that it could get bought up by another one, because you look at what happened with alcohol. Not that we're going to replicate alcohol or replicate tobacco, but the microbreweries were all the rave just a few decades ago.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is that space that we're going to see small cultivation.
And there was consolidation. There was a lot of consolidation. And there's things we can learn from alcohol. But that's the merger and
acquisition. Yeah. And that's what I think is the American dream. I do something, I build up my market share. If somebody bigger wants it, I'll cash my chips out if it's the right price. Yeah. And that, to me, is I think some inexperienced cultivators that sometimes they were patients first. They didn't understand the marketplace that we were merging into. And now that they're starting to get educated, and it's partly what Oaksterdam wants, is the workforce, the business management, your ability to understand what you're getting into. And I feel like we just got your curriculum together. Your book has only been out a short time. And I feel this is the new emerging place, because when I go and talk to cultivators, they're all starting to get into being, very importantly, custodying their genetics, trying to do something with what is happening. And I think you were one of the first ones out there to kind of stake the flag into it, to say, look, we got to be respectful of what we're going to build, or we're not going to build something, because it takes a little bit of time. And I think you're kind of like Steve Jobs, in the sense the breeders have to develop something before people know they're going to even have an interest in it. Yeah. And how do you know that as a breeder? I mean, you're saying you're sourcing the way it looks, or the way it smells, or maybe the cultivation tech that's behind it. What I've always felt, and it's been troubling, is sometimes the best plants that are liked by the folks on the marketplace are the worst to grow. Yeah. Like, I've come across strain and varietal that we've tracked over the decades, back when we only called them strains, and we didn't call them cultivars, and we didn't call them varietals. Yeah. And
people said strand a lot too back in the day.
Yeah. And
some of them still say it.
And it was always troubling to me, because we didn't know enough to place them. And I don't think people understood it enough to even know, were they getting shorted by only having the fast run varietals? Because they didn't even know that, there's this whole other long varietal that we could talk about.
Because it was illegal, people wanted it done as quickly as possible. There was less problems that could go on, whether it was legal problems or problems with the plant. And that's why autoflowers work so well in certain climates, in certain places.
They came online because of that dynamic.
Yeah, well, autoflowers, it's like, so I do autoflowers in the Caribbean, right? And I don't think autoflowers are maybe the best for the Caribbean, but what it is, it's best for the guys who don't know how to grow very well. Yeah. Because the plant is alive the least amount of time, so there's less time to fuck it up. And, I do a little bit of everything. So with breeding, it's like, we have autoflowers. We have mostly commercial viable stuff, right? That fits into people's check boxes. But I also love experimenting with long flowering varieties, terpenes that are unique, stuff that's strange.
Can you get long flowering autoflowers?
They do have super autos that go longer. They can go past 100 days.
But like, are the haze varieties lending
Yeah,
into them
in fact,
and giving you the same kind of feedback that you would see in the
big shout out for Mephisto. They're just about to release Apollo Haze Auto Flowers.
Okay.
And so that's exciting. I think that's going to be a really fun one.
Maybe that's where the autos come into their own, is being able to offer some of these harder varietals that take longer, but still being able to give you that gate to get them done.
Yeah. And, I'm friends with Budgelero. They do only long flying varieties. And I love their model. And we've been discussing why long flying varieties are special. And part of it is the terpene, the maturity of the different terpenes. You're getting stuff that's older.
Yep.
You're getting dark terpenes. You're getting
It's aged.
amber, and then you're getting milky terpenes. And so you're getting this combination of terpenes in combination, which adds to the effect, right? And so will you get that out of a long auto flower? Like if it's longer, you might get some of it, right? But it's going to be different than something that's around, if we're talking stuff that's a 6-month flower, or because they have some stuff that's 22 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? In 18 weeks, these pearls that are 18 to 22 weeks are just next level. So, and really special for effect. Some of them even just lift you up real gently. You're high for a good amount of time, and then you go down and it's very gentle. You're not grumpy. I notice sometimes with some of these newer varieties, like if I smoke a bunch and I take a nap, I wake up and I'm just grumpy. I'm a beast.
There definitely are differences on some of the varietals that you touch and their effects and their post effects.
Yeah.
I noticed big though with extracts, that extracts have a different effect on you if you use them earlier in the day.
Sure.
Like it wears you down more because it takes you up. It
just depends. So I do jabs first thing in the morning. Like I'll do a dab and I'll go to the gym. Right.
Oh, I'm not saying negative about it, but I just feel like on a day where I haven't done it, I feel a different level of feeling of not energy, of just clarity.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not that I'm not a dab enthusiast. Yeah. I'm a huge dab enthusiast. As I said, I found my superpower as a kid, James, is that I could get high and be around people and they didn't know I was high.
Same. I never got the red eye. I mean, it would be very
red
rare
eye was
where
very
I would get red
rare
eyes.
to me. So I think we share that tech where we can do things when we're high that most people are like befuddled, stuck in the corner, trying to figure out how to get out from under their highness. I'm literally talking people out from under the table and they're like, "You're high?" And I'm like, "No."
Right. I had to be around my parents a lot when I was younger. So I would smoke and I would end up being around my parents. So I had to act responsible. I had to act like I knew what I was talking about. I couldn't look high. My parents would be pissed.
My mom was a psych nurse, so I double you there. Yeah. She knew I was on something. And remember when I got into growing cannabis in my basement and got really enticed by it, she didn't know what I was doing. And she's like, "Jeff, are you on drugs?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What do you mean?" And she's like, "Everything's changed. You're not taking care of your animals anymore. Your hobbies have changed." And I'm like, I'm just getting older. I tried to downplay it because she was had her finger on it.
Totally.
I'm like growing cannabis in the garage basement, pulling off stuff that nobody in my neighborhood knew. And she's like, "I can feel something's changed." And I'm like, "Look, it's just a phase."
So let's talk about Richard Lee and his legacy. I think he was one of the most important people in modern cannabis, especially. Hands down.
I don't know as I've met another person that both made me want to go farther and made me lose fear than Richard.
Yeah.
Partly because of his disability, that he was an able-bodied man,
right,
and then got into a wheelchair with a work accident. He knew that he was missing something and could do more. And he was that instigator. And he had a long history with cannabis. I don't know if you read some of his obits that he sold cannabis in high school. He had touched it and he was a marketer. So the whole time he was around cannabis, he was trying to market it to make it more legitimate, to make it replace alcohol. And like Dennis, Richard had a non-alcoholic tendency. He had to have his arms twisted to allow alcohol at his staff parties.
Right.
Like he really just thought cannabis was the choice and that if you want to do something else, go do it over there.
Yeah.
And I kind of supported that, but I also lobbied him to allow alcohol at his staff parties because if he didn't, some people wouldn't show up because that was their choice of entertainment. And if it was the Christmas party, why aren't you letting them have some fun?
Right.
And so he kind of got a little lack on that, but it was a tough thing because he saw his track and Richard, for his best, always saw this as a war, James.
Yeah.
From day one, when I met him, he was like, "We're at war and we get bullets and they may not be shooting bullets. They're like pens and papers and we get to vote and we get to talk to people." And I remember he was on the internet before people were in the internet. Like he had an AOL email and people didn't even use email. And he's like, "You got to get on the internet," because he was all part of these drug forums and things. And,
Sure.
and I just remember being pushed by him to do things that were outside of my comfort zone. Even though I was a nerd and got into things, I wasn't completely all over the internet. I was a little phobic of it because it was exposure that at the time when you were doing what I was doing, you didn't know how it was going to turn on you. Right. And nowadays we're all over the internet. I mean, social media is partly how we raise our brands.
Embedded in it. Yeah. It's like, it's so different than how it was.
And Richard came from an era where that's what he wished.
Yeah.
He really wanted this point where he saw cannabis being just the same as tobacco and alcohol, and he wanted it rightfully placed there in its nostalgic spot that was ripped away by Nixon. Yeah. And he saw a big pivot in the 70s that he didn't want to see us get stuck in, and he was willing to put his whole liberty on the line for it. I remember when we used to meet privately, how we would joke about sometimes we felt like we got ourselves in over our head. And we would go back and say, well, it was worth it because no matter what we were going to get out of this was more change.
Yeah.
No matter what people said about us, no matter what bad things they were going to say, because Richard got into some arguments with folks. I mean, he pushed the paradigm with Prop 19 and people were worried about partly what's happening now, which is a disintegration of a movement of an industry that was paying its way. But Richard never wanted to protect hazard pay. And he saw this being propped up on hazard pay because we needed to protect ourselves. And if we got robbed or raided, we needed to be able to get out from under that civil liberty concern.
Sure.
But to give up the concern of their liberty and make it more about business issues, you needed to be good with business.
Yeah.
And he was always that way. So whether he was Republican at heart or because of his tendencies of being in Texas, that he came from that era where business was first. What you mentioned earlier about happening in Texas with hemp, I think it was the best thing that he could ever be part of.
Yeah.
The fact that one of his last things was noticing how far his home state had come forward, right out from under him. The feeling of that legacy shift, I could hear it through the phone talking with him. He was just so happy. He was profoundly affected by that people were having access to this in ways that he'd only hoped would happen in Texas. He could never see that because,
I still can't fully wrap my head around it, to be 100% honest with Texas.
It's such an innocuous plant that we should be everywhere. We should be on every shelf, every Circle K, every mini mart.
Right.
And when people get all weirded out saying, well, they're buying illicit, synthetic THC. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not what my siblings bought, which was like spicy and bath salts. No, but bath salts, stuff that should never be in a human consumption mode. And that's what they were being driven to. And we need to be competitive with our non-problematic psychotropic substances out there, because what is coming out online now, and I ran retail store in downtown for decades, right? And I still get a lot of periodicals sent to me from Champs, shows, and from other places. And this stuff that's now being DEA licensed as a Schedule 1.
Right.
The 7-HO,
right?
That's a derivative out of kratom.
Mm-hmm.
I can see why they were afraid of us, James, because they thought that's what we were. They thought that we were something that was going to stop your heart. Because if you take the 7-AOH and you overdose with it, your heart stops because it is a smooth muscle relaxant, just like heroin, just like morphine. We can never do that. And so I want us to be competitive on that store shelf,
right? Because
there's another drink out there that's causing an addiction wave called Feel Good. It's across the shelves. You can look it up on Insta. You can look it up on X. And it's a little teeny marketed product, like a little shot that you buy, but it's not what you think it is. It's opiate-based stuff. And it gets you addicted and you want to sell your shirt to go buy the next drink at Mini Mart.
Wow.
That, to me, should be what we draw the attention of the federales onto, is things that cause that addiction behavior where you start wanting to de-shirt yourself for the next hit.
Right.
Because have you ever met one of your buddies that uses cannabis that wants to do that? No. And when I talk to law enforcement, I try to draw that paradigm with them that we aren't your risk, and you know it, right? Yeah. And when I talked the first time with Rick Hart and I walked him through my office back in 97, before I knew he was a Fed, we sat down in my office after we did the tour, like we did here, of just the rooms.
Yeah.
And he's looking around and I said, Rick, I really feel moved that your city, my city, Oakland, gave me this job. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I'm providing cannabis to medical patients, but I'm doing more. I'm actually making them calm down on the street. Because if they're using this, let me just ask you, Rick, how many times you ever come across somebody that shot their wife, got into fisticuffs, battered their domestic partner, and you go to their home and they're high on cannabis? And I looked at my attorney, Rob, and I looked back at him. And he's like, what do you mean, Jeff? It's like, I don't get the question. And it's like, how many times have you had that happen where there's been domestic violence and it's been one of us? He literally said that. And I said, so you're telling me that you're more afraid of us than that alcohol that's in the corner stores, that you're finding all those domestic disputes because normally somebody's drunk out of their mind. And he's like, and literally, it was like one of those little comic things where you see the light bulb go off in his head. I literally had that moment with him. I saw the light bulb pop in his head and he was like, Jeff, nobody's ever explained it to me like that. Nobody ever pulled apart the thing there and made me understand it, because he was trained by DEA and law enforcement to say, this is just a drug that makes you step into the next drug and you're all bad.
Gateway drug. For sure.
And as we get back to the other things, I'm not against kratom as its natural plant substance. I think it's fairly safe. It could be a stepping away from opiates and other things like that. But the synthetic derivatives, because they stop your heart, we need to be really careful about that. I mean, and this is coming from a kid that went through DARE, didn't get to see what most drugs were until I took my DARE class, and I got to see the suitcase full of drugs, and I went, wow, these are all the Quaaludes, and I didn't even know what these were.
That was a crazy thing.
I remember the DARE officer looking at me like, why are you pointing that out all the kids? And I'm like, well, you brought it into class.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know what I was doing
Roach
at the time.
clips, all this stuff. They had it
I'm like, I never even seen a joint before. And they're like, is this a good idea? I remember they were looking at me like somehow I was the trouble. And I'm like, you brought the drugs to class. Why am I the trouble? But I feel like we need to make them focus on the really bad drugs. And I like the aspect of what they're doing right now. Not because they're not coming after us, but because they are focusing on one of the drugs that is so scary. Being a dad, I can't believe I'm telling my kids this, because I never thought I would explain to my kids, you need to stay away from these drugs. They can kill you. Because I went, wait a minute, that's what it sounded like when I was a kid.
Right.
But when I was a kid, James,
we had different drugs.
We had different drugs, and you didn't get access to angel dust that could kill you in a microdose. It could make you get wigged, and maybe you float out the window and die.
Yeah.
Maybe you go in front of a car because you're not here, but you're not dying from the substance. And fentanyl now, they've done these little PSAs where you see little microdust that could kill multiple people.
Yeah.
That's truthful. And that's
scary.
That's why I worry my kids are just going to try some powder drug that some kids laced with something to get their buddies.
Gonna randomly die.
Oh, that we know, not randomly. No, it could not wipe out whole troops of kids, because we've already seen it where one dealer's brought in fentanyl-laced stuff and 5, 7, 8 kids that all get touched with it die. And we don't get to bring them back. So I'm glad right now that we are focusing on maybe some drugs that shouldn't be in our society, because I've always felt the DEA had a reason to be here. It's dangerous drugs that are going to kill you. Yeah. And we know cannabis doesn't really kill you. Right. So I never understood the hypocrisy around how it could get their focus. Sure. And how we didn't get to check them with a metrics to say, why aren't you doing something different?
Yep.
Right. And it's partly, I feel like we're in that stepping stone of Schedule 3, because it takes it out of that Nixonian placement. Mm-hmm. And I still can't believe that we're sitting in a state of Nixonianness, that Nixon placed into Schedule 1. And when I got sued,
we're still feeling the impact.
I went back through all the research and I pinned down why it got placed there. And I looked at all the history around it, the legislative findings. Yeah. And it was literally a deal-making process where they went, okay, we're going to set up this commission because we don't understand what it is. But in setting up the commission, we're just going to temporarily place it over here in Schedule 1 until the commission comes back to tell us what to do. And when the commission came back, do you know what Nixon did? He held a press conference. You can literally see it if you pull it up on YouTube. It's black and white, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. He holds up the Schaefer Commission and then throws it in the trash can and says, this is junk science. I'm not accepting the report. Yeah. Even though it was written by prestigious people, they spent millions of dollars and traveled the world. They went to India and looked at the Indian Hemp Drugs Commission. They went to Europe. They interviewed intellects all over the country, including the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And they came to the conclusion, the worst thing about it was that you go to jail for using it. Yeah. And they coined that phrase decrim. Boy, things move slow, don't they?
It's wild.
That was in 72, 73.
Right.
And we're still stuck with that same scenario. So
55 years later almost.
Any movement is good movement because it gives us a little bit of breath for our businesses to incubate more change. Because what I'm hopeful of is businesses like yours, folks that are leaning into this tech, bringing us out of the shadow more. Because who wanted to be in the shadow? The only reason why we grew indoors in small spaces was because the cops. Right. And that's partly what I love about where things are going. It's not that R&D isn't needed indoors and controlled experiments, because what you're doing here, it's never getting outside. Right. You can't do this in an open canopy. No. You can't control what you're doing with research in a way that you're doing here in state-of-the-art facilities where you're controlling air from getting in and mingling and cross-contaminating. When you're outside, we're worried about cross-sprays of pesticides, let alone pollen that could ruin what you're doing in research completely. Totally. Right. So I don't think we're ever going to see indoor growing go away, and R&D is where we are going to be inside.
For sure. So I got one question for you. If you had one piece of advice for your younger self what would that one piece be?
Don't give up. When I was in this long ago, there were some spots where I felt it was dark. There was no hope for this, that every morning I was waking up with a rash of worry that I wasn't going to wake myself up. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's not the case now. And I can't explain it to people that are in this era. I can't even tell my kids about this because they don't get it.
Right.
That we came from such a space of non-ability.
Right.
And the problems were everywhere.
It's hard to explain what went on. If you weren't there, you can never fully explain it because it's so wild. But I think psychedelics are kind of like that too. Like unless you've experienced it, you can never really describe
all the trouble
it.
that we're going through with Trump.
Yeah.
Stripping of rights, the backing back of abortion. It's like we already were there.
Yeah.
Like I look at it and go, you're just catching up with where my path has been.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that we need to have some safe steps, some legal changes to put in place.
Right.
Did I foresee that abortion was going to be less viable than cannabis?
It's the weirdest thing.
But do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It goes back to my point though about that morality. And when I found out about this, I was rather disappointed. I went to Sarasota, Florida, and I met with Robert Randall, the guy that sued the government in the 70s to create the IND program. Okay. So I had a chance to meet him before he passed away and got to interview him, ask him a bunch of questions. I was already sued by the government. This was in 99. Yeah. So they'd locked me down, shut me over, and more or less I passed the baton on. But I was interested in what it was going to take to change the rules. Yeah. And he'd done a lot of work in the 80s to change medical laws, and he had some traction, and then he got sick and backed away and kind of retired. And I said, what's it going to take? You know, you know where I'm at. I've gotten sued, and he didn't like the fact I was pushing people to grow. Yeah. He didn't like the fact I was dispensing clones. He's like, that's medical. You should make it. That's all pharmaceutical. I'm like, no, dude, you grew medically on your deck. You got busted. It helped you with glaucoma. You turned it into a federal lawsuit, got the government to grow your own. People can grow their own plants and still get it. Yeah. And he's like, he kind of admitted I was right, even though he didn't want to, because he didn't want to force patients like himself to have to grow for their own health. Right. But he got why we wanted to do it. And he was kind of supportive once he saw it develop into we can grow at home and not be a problem. Right. But he leaned back in his chair. And I didn't know at the time he was HIV positive and he was kind of going through some illnesses that inevitably took his life. Yeah. He said, Jeff, I don't know how to say this, but morals are going to have to be bankrupt in this country or changed for us to get our way. Yeah. There's no way for us to get this up the flagpole to change until morally we're not based in Puritanism. And I almost cried, James. You know why? It's not something I could do. At the time, James, I was looking for what I could get done, what I could get accomplished, what I could get other people to do for me, what I could talk to somebody or make them feel that they needed to do, a politician to act. There's nobody that could do that. How could I go and tell a politician that you're going to have to strip away abortion rights? You're going to have to make immigrants want to leave. You're going to have no rights to most of the people in this country. It's almost going to be like authoritarianism. But that moral check, that ending of that eroding of that is also what gives us the right to be. Would you have been able to pass that off 10 years ago as like the way we needed to do it? 20 years ago? Nobody wanted to step up to that. And when I say that to people, they're like, oh, and you paint it that way. Roll forward. I was at the Prop 64 campaign party with Gavin. And he had to step back and say that Trump won. And I was sitting next to an attorney and she was just mortified. She's like, how can he win? And I'm like, it's the way the system works. Yeah. It's always been that way. I mean, I was not surprised that he won at the time. Actually, I was kind of like, we focused on the things and we didn't get our way, but we actually moved Prop 64. And I went, and then when I look back on it, I'm like, that's what it was. We rang that morality bell. Yep. And I didn't get it at the time that we were in that change already of the morals in the country have shifted enough that it doesn't matter. Because even right now, you see it in social media. You see the pushback of Sam and others saying, we can't reschedule. It's the worst thing that can happen. We're going to demoralize the country. Yep. They're stuck in the paradigm. They don't see the cookie's already broken. Right. The temper tantrum's over. They don't have it anymore. And wow, to be in this era, James, where we're experiencing this massive shift that I've been waiting for from 30 years. Yeah. I thought it was possible in 99. I literally thought we were on the precipice of it as Gore was going to get elected. And then that got pulled right out from under us by the Supreme Court. Because it literally, I mean, you look at the presidents that have used. Yeah. We know Clinton, we know Gore, we know Obama. Yeah. Trump, maybe, but probably not because he's not so druggy. He might have had some eras where he smoked a joint in Studio 54 with some friends. Sure. Right there. But maybe not because he's never been a big fan. But he was in that drug era of that culture where the 70s didn't see it as a drug.
He was into partying. I don't think he partied with weed. Maybe
no, I don't think he wanted it. And that's where I'm like, wow. And we're dealing with an era where he's going to make it all right. I shake my head and go, how did we get this spot though? Because it's so, I never could have saw it this way. And I never thought I had a crystal ball to see the future, but I did have some visions, James, about why I wanted to do this, about why, as I said, never give up.
Right.
Because I thought if I gave up, we wouldn't get this far. I thought that if I didn't do what I was going to do and have a chance of making other people see that, oh, you can get through this door and not get your head cut off. Because I didn't think I would be successful, James. I never thought that I would be one of the people that helped to turn cannabis around into a legal commodity.
Right.
Because I didn't see it happening. I didn't see the generational shift. It was so long in the making. Yeah. But in the 90s, I knew it was possible. And in the 90s, I knew that what we were doing was just like in the .com era. They didn't know what Google was, but they knew Google was going to do something.
Totally.
And boy, I mean, I remember reading a press hit that Ed got involved in. And he said, look, this is going to be bigger than computers. It's going to be bigger than the microprocessor because we don't have to invent it. We just got to grow it. And I'm like, wow.
Ed has said some really amazing things over the years.
And it just stuck with me that folks like you don't have to invent any technology. We're just managing to make the technology fit our needs. Yeah. And the plant is so...
We're just helping guide the plant along.
Well, and I think the more that you've attuned yourself to listening to what consumers use is helping you get into that space. Because again, you have a very hard job. All breeders do. You have to come up with something months ahead of time before it's going to be online.
Years.
Yeah.
Or a year, minimum a year. It usually takes 18 months to create new cultivars. That are on the market. People don't understand. It's like, oh, you just cross this plus this, and then you pheno hunt it. It's like, nah, you got to grow it out multiple times. Plus, if you're doing the work, you're making the seeds yourself. That process takes several months.
What's the hardest part, if you had to say, learning what you've learned about breeding and looking back?
I think the hardest part of breeding is the selection process. Having a good enough palate to select good stuff. I think that's the thing that's the most overlooked and the most complicated is because there's only a handful of guys out there that are just amazing, not necessarily amazing breeders, but amazing pheno hunters. And those guys all grow really good flower. They all appreciate flower on a different level. And, I can give a shout out to guys like Mean Gene, right? That he has an amazing palate. Jackson's just, there's guys like him. And even some of these European guys have really amazing palates. Short Brooks is one of those guys who doesn't actually smoke flower, right? He's not a smoker. He's Dutch, but he's really good at growing the plant. And I think he has a good sense for breeding on structure, on aroma, on all these things. And so he's gone through and looked at millions of plants over his lifetime and collected data points. And so he knows what's good and what's not good. Not necessarily the effect, like you have to be a consumer to, experience that. But the selection process is the toughest. And it's like, especially when you're trying to produce at scale and you're doing pheno hunts, how many can you actually go through? How many can, you can basically go through the stuff that checks the boxes and then go through those ones and actually smoke, but you're not going to smoke 400 different cultivars. You're going to get palate fatigue. You're going to get, you're not going to be able to experience the effect because you figure how many different effects can you feel in a day? We
started hundreds of seeds when I moved Richard to town into that warehouse and he grew them all out to find 4. Yeah. Because that's all he wanted to grow.
But the real breeders, it's like they can go through and like, even though we might find within about like we selected 20 out of 40 my guys loved out of a cross that we made, right? And so we germinated 40 just to see how it was going. Usually we do anywhere between 50 and 100, but there was 40 of these and then 20 of them came back. The guys wanted to keep 20 and it's like there's too many similar ones within that. We actually have to go back and that's where COAs can be valuable, but also we can go smoke 20 different things and go, okay, yeah, these three are winners. These are next in line. And then we can get rid of the rest because they're too similar to all these other ones.
Yeah, it does have a lot of similarity character, I think, when you're doing that production out. Do you see anything when you're pulling out the 40 or 50 cultivars that come out of your crosses that is like distant, that floats off the map? That
there's outliers every time. We see in large populations, we're finding outliers. There's stuff that now, knowing what I know, I maybe wouldn't cull. Some of these pearl varieties right there.
When you say pearl,
pearl is like a single brack bud and with node spacing. And so you're getting this one little brack. And then 4 inches later, you're getting another brack. And basically they go up on these long flying varieties.
I've seen that.
And so I've seen this expressed time and time and time again in large populations, especially with autoflowers, but even in some of the stuff that's like really diverse. I'm getting these things that I would normally just cull and get rid of. And now I look back at all these things that I've gotten rid of and I go, man, there could have been something special in there, but I didn't look past the structure. And so it was the first thing I would pull.
I would pull the pearls too, because they don't look like they're going to produce. They don't look like they'll smoke. And I've seen some growers put it out on Instagram, buddies I know, and they're like, look at these pearls. And I'm like, what are these things?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. They're rejects.
It looks like trash. And a lot of people to the first inspection, they're like, but if you actually smoke.
I know, I see it. I saw him pull it in and then smoke, and he's like, these are the perfect. And I'm like, wow, that educated me. I have to admit, because structure isn't the only thing. So it's interesting that you say varietal specifics is really because I when I teach about home gardening, I'm like, you're locked in. And media, picking your media is likely as important as picking your varietal, because you lock into it. You can't move it. If you're growing in dirt, you can't change dirt very easily. If you're growing
and the better
an OG
you are,
Kush midstream, you can't change it from an OG Kush. No matter what you do to treat it, it's not going to change its covers.
The better you are as a grower, the better you're going to be at breeding, right? It just kind of goes hand in hand. I feel like because you can make the plant express better. Yeah. If you're a shitty grower and you decide you're going to start doing selections, you might find some outliers that are great, but you're not going to be able to make the plant express well enough to be able to say this one is better than this one. They're both coming out mediocre, right?
And I would give you a plant whisperer degree, because somebody that knows how to bring that essence out of the plant and bring the sweet spot into each type of varietal, because it's like one plant doesn't grow the same as the next plant. Its sister is going to grow different. They might need a different humidity zone.
Well, you might need to harvest it at a different time. So that's why you have to grow it out multiple times.
Or the long flowers, they want more light. Like, so when in our normal rooms that we get by with growing these 56, 60-day plants, we can turn the light way down and it's not a problem. You put those other ones in there and they're going, I'm not getting enough to grow.
Yeah.
And that we didn't understand early on. We just did not get that.
Well, there's so much stuff that we thought was one way and it's turned out to be a different way. But we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
But if people would like to find out more about Jeff Jones or Oaksterdam University, where is the best place to go?
All of our current courses are found at oaksterdam.com. I would give you a rundown of what we're doing, but short of your new breeding class, we're doing retailing, we're doing bud tending, workforce development, management. We have a whole host of classes that are both in person soon.
Yeah.
And we also do a lot of the online courses. I think where things are going to be going is we're going to start moving fast. I think that as we start to see this industry break up into potentially having more pharmaceutical tentacles, which I'm not necessarily afraid of, I think Oaksterdam's hopefully going to help vet out where we're going to see our safe zone, because folks like us aren't going to exist in the pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
But I don't think veterans or medical patients should have that pharmaceutical option limited to them. Right. So I'm kind of glad we're circling back to letting that happen, because I was a little worried. As you saw in the past, medical kind of got almost disappeared from some eras.
Oh, it's wild that we would go from having medical and going to the conversation about how it affects to getting rid of medical, and it's just about getting high. And it's like, especially because we're all here because of the way it made us feel.
I never understood how quickly we forget in that point. And it's not that I wanted a legacy of remembrance, because again, I'm not trying to be an influencer specifically or build me as a brand.
Yeah.
I've always worked under other brands, specifically trying to make everybody work together, because I'm not even brand specific. I'm more brand agnostic. I want to work everybody into favorability, because I believe there's enough space under this tent. It's partly what Richard, I think, instilled in me long ago, is that it's not about monopolizing this. It's about making enough people have enough space that we get change that we want, because everybody has skin in the game.
Yep.
And that's where I feel we missed it early on, is that not enough people got skin in the game. And now that people are in here, it's the funnest place to be. And I'm so glad that you're bringing people into this paradigm by hosting a podcast, touching on different topics and making breeding a centerpiece of it, because if we didn't have new genetics, we'd be stuck with the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's partly what I never wanted with cannabis, is to be stuck in the paradigm of prohibition. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's so much opportunity with breeding. There's so many caveats that we've yet to even experience, as I talked about ornamental growth versus what we've been doing with flower cutting and extracts, and whether or not they're now focusing on putting pressure on all washability, right? To me, that's going to all pale compared to the large marketplace, maybe of individual moms buying plants to grow in their home instead of buying a free breeze pod that they stick in their wall. Because it needs recharged, and they're ready to buy one every few months.
Well, we sell clones. We sell clones online direct to consumer. So if you guys are looking for clones, check out the website, jamesladgenetics.com. And also, we got our boot camp coming up. I got a boot camp in Brazil coming up that you guys are going to be a part of. We're still working out the details, but that's in November.
Let me ask about the boot camp in Brazil. What are you envisioning with that?
It's a 3-day boot camp, and we're actually going to start doing it in Brazil, but the next one's going to be in Germany. It's educational. So we have different, so each event is going to have different speakers, and we're going to have several speakers each day talking about different aspects. Nikki T is going to be there. We got Ray Bama talking about runts and building brands. We got Maya Elizabeth from Ohm coming. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then hopefully we're going to get all this worked out, and you'll be able to get it. You'll be able to order it online from Oaksterdam.
Oh, that'd be neat.
And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to put the link for the QR and the address for the Oaksterdam class up on the screen. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, man. It's really been a blast. We're going to have to do this again. We could do we could do this for hours.
I want to come back because I feel like there's developments that are happening within the changing of the schedule and where we're going to see things happen and I'm a big talker. The thing I like about cannabis is it's bringing people together that don't always share the same political philosophies, not even the same backgrounds. And then it crosses over spectrums of that and makes people kind of handshake over things that maybe we wouldn't have talked about before. Sure. As you say, we're passing the peace pipe around and we've yet to see where it's going to take us.
Right.
That's the most intriguing thing about this is that we like to spread the word about pacificity, not trying to cause wars.
Right.
And our plant is not triggering any extra activity around that. That's the neat thing about cannabis that I've always liked is that I've always felt sure that no matter what happens with us exposing cannabis to the masses, it's going to end well compared to what we've been dealing with.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to having you on the next episode that we do together. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you guys very much for your support. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe down below.